Okay, you're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Like this. Just under, just pull out. Yeah.
Oh, I'll just leave it right here in front here.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are on the Comox First Nations territory. First item will be adoption of the agenda.
Move. Second.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We do have one delegation. We have Dave Mellon, who is going to speak to us about the RCM SAR and their request for extension for moorage and hydro. So Dave, welcome again. You have many hats. So today you're wearing the RCM SAR hat. So we'll give you 10 minutes, Dave. That might be tough for you, but then there's going to be questions from council. So please go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna do this right there, Rock.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to a share screen here.
Can you guys share the screen? Provide the host to share the screen for presentation?
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, we're doing it. We can hear him.
Okay, perfect. We're just wait for this to come online.
Yeah, they should be good to go. You should be okay to share. Yeah, you should be good.
Go ahead, click that green button there.
Okay. Boom.
Okay, presentation there. Yeah, just that's it. Just click on that. Just click on that. Yeah, double click. There you go.
Okay.
And that icon at the bottom.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, and how do I get rid of this? Rock's just gonna give me a hand here, guys. Bear with us for a second.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor and councilors, thank you for allowing us to make this presentation. I know your time is valuable, but we've got a presentation here we'll quickly run through. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dave Mellon. I'm the current president of the Comox Valley Marine Rescue Society, and I'm sitting here in Rock's residence. He's helping me go through this presentation with you, and we'll very quickly get it underway. Sorry. Just a quick overview, just the history, what we do, our members training, what Comox Valley Marine Rescue Society is about, and the future. The history is, of course, it's all related to the Coast Guard auxiliary. Lifeboat stations. We've been out on the West Coast for over 150 years, and I actually have glass cylinders from the old Banfield Lighthouse Telegraph Station at my house that I found one time out there. So the Coast Guard's been involved in needless to say, on Vancouver Island on the coast for a long, long time. And this is just an arm of it. What am I doing here, Jock? There we go. So there was a change to the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary Pacific to the Royal Canadian Marine Search and Rescue. So there was a name change in May 2012 to reflect the work we do and to separate the public's perception that we are not the actual Coast Guard. The organization is growing and is continually working to provide additional services on the water to all boaters, whether commercial or pleasure only. So it's quite a valuable thing. History-wise, the first boat was the Bruce Brown. Bruce was heavily involved in the Coast Guard and been around the valley for years. The second boat was the Bruce Brown II. And moving forward, we've moved up to the Cape Lazo in 2014. And this is an incredible piece of equipment, replacement value about $850,000. It's got a jet drive system in it for powering it, state-of-the-art navigational rescue equipment. It can travel at 35 knots. You can see there 65 kilometers an hour on the water, and can operate in seas up to 15 feet, which I don't want to be in. The Paul Giles is a standard rigid inflatable 24-footer. Its replacement value is roughly $82,000 to $85,000. And it's got 2 new engines, and it has similar up-to-date equipment. But as you can see, it's an open boat. Next slide, please, Ron. What does the organization do? We are a marine rescue resource that's available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And if necessary, our volunteers are willing and ready to get out there to risk their lives to help anyone in distress. And once again, that's both commercial and pleasure. It is a challenge to provide SAR response capability to such a large area, which we'll be showing you shortly. And our volunteers meet the challenge, and I am very, very impressed with their professionalism and the amount of work they put into it. You can see locally here, right in the center, is basically the 5th Street Bridge where the little black icon is. They go all the way up the river to the 5th Street Bridge, and you can see all the way down to the ferry to Denman Island and arcs right around. It takes up a lot of area. The area covered is 10 nautical miles in a line of sight, but not limited to that. If something pretty serious is going on, the crews can be called out to assist Powell River or anybody else. We have volunteer crews ready to respond, once again, 24/7. They average between 40 to 45 calls a year. And in 2020, they did over 30 missions and over 500 hours of volunteer time on the water. Other resources they provide is public education of boating safety, free volunteer vessel inspections. You've all been down to the marina and see the jackets, life jackets, personal flotation devices hanging there available for kids that are down there near the water. Because as we know, kids don't float well and they move way too fast for us to keep up to. So they offer up the PDFs for free. And you've seen them down there with snow to surf, dragon boat races, build, bail, and sail, all these other events that unfortunately we had to pass on last year, but who knows, we might be able to squeak some of them in this year. And the SAR is an organization of volunteers that they all live in our community because they have to be available. Like volunteer firefighters, they take regular calls, continuous training, and maintain their own vessels and equipment. The current members' ages range from 23 to 75, and that doesn't include me just yet. 29 active crew members, 10 who support the group through maintenance activities, vessel inspections, and community education. And these people they're the lifeblood of our organization in keeping the vessels maintained to such a high level of standard and readiness. And I was blown away when Rock sent me the breakdown of the hours for last year. The volunteers volunteered 59 hours short of 40,000 hours to keeping all of this going. Just an outstanding amount of work. Currently, they have 5 coxswains. They're small vessel captains who are on rotation and lead in the training sessions. 6 advanced crew members that assist in training and provide onboard navigation and helming of the vessels. And then 10 crew members who support the team and undertake many roles on the water, including learning and assisting with navigation, helm. And these people are out there all the time whenever they can, even through COVID, doing as best they can. Their training's been cut back a little bit because of COVID, but they still have to be ready to go. And all the members are trained in basic and advanced first aid. And on an annual, Rock says we take in 4 to 6 new members a year, and they undergo up to 5 months of classroom and dockside training, which again has been slowed a little bit with COVID, but they're willing to make it happen and they're putting in the time. All the members undergo at least 40 hours of training a year. Once again, first aid, self and assisted recoveries, because you got to know how to get yourself out of the water if you happen to wind up in it. Navigation, how to do all the charting, plotting, and stuff like that. Seamanship, how to tie a boat up, how to tie good knots so they don't come undone. Forecasting the outcome of weather and tides and how that's going to affect your operation. Radio operations, boat operations, slow speed, high speed, and search and rescue operations, and of course vessel towing, which is a big part of it. The training, you can see here how it's broken down and what they have to do. They have to be able to get ashore. Sometimes somebody might be on an island, so they're going to have to land the boat, and somebody's going to have to get ashore and get them back to the boat. And they put in a lot of time constantly training and making sure that everybody's up to speed on all their training and so forth and so on. So once again, these volunteers put in a tremendous amount of hours. they can apply and are most of them are quite willing to take additional training. They can do training down in Souk, which is sort of the headquarters for all of the volunteer marine rescue groups. Or they can do, if they like, they can go over to the West Coast and do the rigid hull inflatable training. And that picture of that boat out of the water, that's fairly calm seas for that side. I know a fella that does the course, and it's quite a handful taking the course. And you don't want to be like the guy in the bottom of the picture sitting on top of your boat. But once again, it's a high level of training. They do coordinated training with Campbell River, Powell River, where they get together and share all their ideas and partner with a multitude of agencies just to make things better. And when somebody makes a mistake, it's not looked at as a mistake, it's learned at as a learning aid. And we share all that information amongst ourselves and all through BC. The other, you can maybe go to the next slide there, Rock. We also, needless to say, coordinate with 442. They're big on that, and the military base is a big partner in this. And of course, they have a ton of training, and they're always ready to help out or bring into point a scenario and put all these fellows and ladies too to work to make a successful rescue. And these are the different agencies that the group will respond to. Of course, police, fire. If somebody has to be taken off, well, we're not doing it right now, a cruise ship and get ashore. If 442 can't do it, these marine search and rescue groups are obliged to try to get out there and get that patient to a hospital as soon as possible, the coroner's service, and so forth and so on. So there's a multitude of cross relationships here with a lot of our emergency services throughout our community that these people step up to the plate and assist in. The society, this is what I'm the president of, is the fundraising arm of the operation. This is a not-for-profit society, needless to say, and we raise money both locally and through provincial grants. All the vessels are owned at the station are owned by Comox Valley Marine Rescue Society, and we in turn loan the vessels to the unit for the use under a contract with Search and Rescue SARS. So the vessels are 100% community owned. The society also provides operating funds to the station through payment of service by the Coast Guard on task. So if the Coast Guard out of Victoria or Joint Search and Rescue tasks them, they go out, they do recover some of their costs, but not all, of course. But there is a bit of a recovery there for funds, and of course the big operating expenses is fuel for these vessels. But it's an ongoing process trying to keep our head above water, so to speak. You've all seen it. The current station is a 500 square foot floating facility. I've been helping Rock fix up a few things down there to make the very best of that. About 2/3 of the building, I'd say, Rock, is classroom facilities, and the other third is where the maintenance and all their equipment is stored. They have to be very critical. It's like you're going on an airplane, you pack light, and so stuff has to be put away. There's the 2 berths for the 37-foot Cape Lazo, and then the 24-footer, the Paul Giles. Our ultimate goal would be to someday be able to build a float house, because to maintain these vessels in the high standard of readiness and being out on the weather is not particularly good for them. But that's something that we will work with the council and whatever in the future. But right now, our big issue, and not issue as such, but a big request is to continue for another 5 years for the moorage of not only the vessels, but for the station and for the power to power that up. So with that, I would certainly be more than prepared to answer any questions. And Rock's already told me that if any of you wish at any given time to come down and have a tour of either the vessels or the station, we'd be delighted to do that for anybody on council or staff, so they know what they're dealing with.
Great, thank you, Dave and Tarak. Have any questions from council? I don't see any. I do have one or two. So with CETO becoming more and more prevalent in the area, they are a commercial type of vessel. What is your relationship with them? Noting that your SAR taskings are about, what was it, 40 a year? Are you finding that there's less SAR taskings and more taskings for CETO? I just recall my days on the Coast Guard. We were challenged in tasking, our SAR resources when CETO was available. So is one taking more slack than the other, so to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I'll have Rock answer that because he's got more up-to-date information than I do.
Okay.
Thanks, for the opportunity here. So yes, CETO did have an impact, but we have a good relations with CETO. Understand that CETO, basically all they do is towing. When it comes to first aid, life-saving, and dangerous situation, they won't do it because they're limited to towing only. And there's a lot of people don't want to use CETO because it's quite expensive unless you get the insurance. So they will ask for search and rescue instead. But that's debatable. That's the Coast Guard makes the last call when it comes to towing. We used to have over 60 sortie or call out. Since CETO is back in, there's been a reduction, but the reductions it's the same along the coast for some reason. They don't know why. Either of opening is because maybe better educations, which is part of what we do too. So hopefully it's working, but there's definitely reductions, but not as significantly as we would think of. But anyway, so there's always a place for first aid. Yeah, and C2 it's been down a couple of times the last couple of years. They just replaced their engine 4 months ago because they lost them. So anyway, and so they're not always back. They take vacations occasionally, and they take their boats with them up to the route up north there. So anyway, yes, it has an impact, but not as major as we would think of.
Okay, thank you. And just on a personal note, I know you folks do a great job. I was a recipient of a tasking number many years ago where I had to get assistance from you, so I appreciate that. And Rock, I'm glad you made your bed because it's looking pretty tidy back there. So, gentlemen, seeing no further questions from council, thank you very much. And we will be dealing with this, but you do a great job for the community, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, guys. Good night now.
Okay, so just leave the button there.
Okay, so we'll move on to adoption of the regular council meeting minutes from Wednesday, March the 3rd.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? That's carried. A special council meeting minutes from March 10th, from March 10th, and there is a correction on page 2 of 16 with that one where we just missed a word, and that should be carried. So
Move as amended.
all right,
Second.
and all in favor? Oh, so Councillor Swift.
There's also another correction where Pat McKenna is down as having voted and he was recused. So it was page 2.
Okay.
Trust the retired school teacher to go through.
Yeah, and me with my red marker.
That was, sorry, page 2, was it?
Let me just look. It was where it was the vote on the affordable housing.
Oh, right. Yeah, so 2/16. Yeah. Good catch, Maureen. So all in favor as amended? And that's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to the public hearing meeting minutes from March 3rd for adoption.
Move.
Second.
Second.
Any questions on that? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thanks. Moving on to the consent agenda. So we'll just get a motion to um, bring all those, or a motion for the consent agenda.
Move receipt of those.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and does anyone wish to bring anything out? We'll need a motion for that. So Councillor Swift and then Bissinger.
I'd like to bring out, well, there's two H's. So it's the one on the water regarding excessive water usage by Wes Rumpel.
Okay. I'll put 2H.
H2O.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so was that the only one, Councillor Swift?
Yes.
Okay, so we have motion seconder on that one.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
And so for discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Swift.
Okay, thank you. Ever since I've been on council, I've been concerned about the way we've rolled out our water metering program. And I agree with what most of what Mr. Rumpel has to say about it. But I guess at some point, I know as roads were being dug up, people were getting water meters, but they were not being notified of this. And we had asked for a change to that. And my question is there any communication about a water meter when it's installed on a regular basis if it hasn't been a request from someone? And if there isn't, I think that we should seriously look at fixing that. So my question is there any communication when a water meter is installed?
The CIO is wanting to respond to that.
It's something that we've identified as being lacking in the past. So we actually have right now a communications package that's either days away from going out or may actually be in the mail already. And it's going to people who have water meters and explains to them what the water meter is. We're going to be going on social media to tell people how to tell if you do have a water meter, as well as how to go out and check your usage to see if you're going to be going over. So something we have identified as not probably being done as well it should have in the past, but we are addressing it. And like I said, if it isn't in the mail right now, it'll be in the mail in a couple days, and you'll start to see those messages going out on social media as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Grant?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there, I've seen in the past, and I can't remember if we could do it or we can't, but you used to be able to go online and have a look at your water usage if you had a meter. Can you still do that?
Yes.
So that is possible?
Yes.
Okay. Because
They give you an identifier, I believe, and you can go online. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And
And that will be.
are we any closer to getting our charging of water actually straightened away so it's kind of much the same for everybody? Because right now we have about a 3-tiered system, and it's the most ridiculous. I know how it all got there, so I know the background, but it's the most ridiculous system that we could have. Are we closing in on being able to streamline that a little bit?
So we are, and as Councillor Swift noted, as we're going into areas, we're putting water meters in, so we're slowly building it that way. We estimate it's going to cost $4 million to finish the install across the entire community of water meters. So right now, the path we're taking is to continue to install them as we're doing projects in area, because that greatly decreases the cost in doing so, because it just becomes a large part of that cost just becomes part of the project that's being done. So there's a cost savings there. We're also looking to identify grants, because grants for installation of water meters come out every once in a while as well. So it is something that we could go out and do next year, but the cost would be $4 million to do so. So that's why we're taking the approach that we are.
And I got a report some years ago, and it said that water meters, you need to start looking at replacing them after about 8 to 10 years. And, they probably last longer than that. So who actually owns the water meter? Do we buy it and give it to the homeowner, or is it up to us to replace them?
I'll have to turn that over either to Clive or Craig. Craig, do you have the answer to that?
Yeah, the water meters are ours. When there's a development that goes in, the developer purchases them for all of the lots that they've created, and then they provide them to us, and we put them in the the meter chamber when the occupancy occurs. And then for any of the houses that we're adding meters to that are existing properties, we purchase those and put them in. The cost savings in the water usage over the years should pay for the cost of those water meters to be installed. And then when they do expire, then they are ours to replace as well.
Okay, so that was my question. We have to replace them at the end of the day. Okay.
Yeah. And they seem to last longer than what we were told in the first place. We do monitor them on a regular basis and identify any that are going seem to be expiring and starting to work in weird ways, and we go and deal with those ones. But for the vast majority, we haven't been out to touch them since they were installed, and we've got some that are well over 10 years old.
Great, thanks. And Councillor Swift, you had your hand up.
Thank you. In the information, the package that's going out, Jordan, I believe even if you've got a water meter, you can still stay on the flat rate if you want to, correct?
Yes, until you exceed the, what is it, the bulk limit? The 500 cubic meters, until you exceed 500 cubic meters.
Yeah, so you have the bulk or the flat rate, then plus any additional charge after 500, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to confirm that.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Minions, you had a question.
I just wanted to confirm, which it sounds like those information packages are going out to every resident in the community so they're able to check, or just from now forward in the areas that are being installed?
So I believe the information packages are going out to the residents who have water meters, plus the social media campaign that will be going out. So all residents will be able to see it through social media, but the letters are only going out to people who have water meters.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swift.
Sorry, this is part of how complicated the rollout of this has been. At one time, we had budgeted a certain amount of money so that a resident could call in and ask to have a meter installed. Is that still available to people?
Craig is nodding his head yes. Is that correct, Craig?
Wrong button.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. If people request them, we still do put them in free of charge. Additionally, if we find that there's a leak on somebody's line, or if we have to do a repair on a service line, we'll throw in a meter as well. So it's not only where we are doing a capital project, it's also where we have issues that we throw them in. So in addition to what Jordan was saying with the meters for existing residences as well, we will be sending out letters to any new meter residences as well. So anybody who's getting a meter, we will make sure that they are sent essentially the same letter going forward.
There's no obligation on their part, though, to go on the metered rate even if they've requested a meter. Is there?
No, we actually recommend that somebody stays on the flat rate for a year to see what their consumption is and to see if it would be beneficial for them to switch over to the pure metered rate.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Minions.
Yeah, just a quick question, because it's been, I think, a year or so since we talked about it. What is the approximate percentage of households that's on the water metering now? Like within a range, obviously not specific.
I'm not sure, Craig, do you know that?
We have just over 3,000 single family residential meters of the approximate 5,000 single family homes. Vast majority of our commercial and multifamily are already registered, are already metered as well.
Okay, thanks. And Craig, are you finding a lot of water leaks because of this? Like folks calling you up because their meter is reading high, and you're finding the water leaks?
Yeah, what we've been doing to date, and we're trying to stop the process, is we review all of the usage on a monthly basis and identify people who are using a lot of water, and we'll provide them, hand out to them a high user letter. it advises people that they are either using a lot of water or they've possibly got a leak. During the summer, we would hand out somewhere between 30 and 50 of those. During the winter, it's usually down to somewhere around 20. And I would get probably a quarter of those people calling me asking for information and for their usage.
Okay, I think maybe that's where we tripped up a bit with Mr. Rumpel, that he wasn't aware that he was using this excessive water, but seems like we got a way forward on that now. So, okay, any further questions on this? Seeing none, Councillor Bissinger, you had your hand up, so would you like to make a motion for an item to take out?
Sure, I'd like to take out item F, please, and that's the letter from Councillor Will Cole Hamilton.
Okay, and so a seconder on that?
Second.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, yeah. Just reading his letters, he's asking for, I mean, there is a sample resolution there, but basically it's just asking for a motion to write a letter to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, Minister of Energy, so on and so forth, just to provide support from the provincial government to local government in order to have tools for greenhouse gas reduction requirements for new buildings, PACE financing, home energy labeling, and requesting province empower local governments to opt to take action with the Help Cities Leads campaign, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if we can pass a resolution at this meeting or if it has to go as a notice of motion. But if anybody else wants to chat about it.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah, if you'd like to make that motion and, seconder, we can discuss that. So
Sure,
you
yeah.
make a motion that we accept the Councillor Will Cole Hamilton's request.
Yeah, I'll
Sure, yeah,
second.
and he's,
Okay.
yeah.
So we move second and for discussion then. Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I read through those letters and the links that were provided just to get, exactly what the implication would be for supporting those motions. And it did appear to be requesting the province to provide optional tools and optional financing through PACE. So I think looking at it, there's nothing that states the path forward that Comox would need to commit to. So I would be for that, although there was a fair amount of literature. And so something, it would possibly be nice to have like Will Cole Hamilton as a delegation, but I'm also supportive of passing it. It did look like we weren't tying ourselves into anything. And I think these things take a long time, even with provincial letters. So I would support it, but definitely some more information would be interesting on that.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of that? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. And any further, Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, I'd like to pull out letter G if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so a seconder on that.
Second.
Okay, so Pat, go ahead for discussion.
Yeah, thanks. So, the letter is about the use for the Spinnaker building, right? And I'm just wondering if that maybe Mayor and Councillor Grant and Councillor Swift, who were kind of a part of those buildings, is that something that we would do, or was the intention to have them as short-term rentals?
I'm going to, Councillor Grant's got his finger on the button here. He was on council, I think, with Councillor Swift about when that was first laid out. So go ahead, Ken.
Sure. So those were always contemplated as short-term rental buildings. And I think we rent them a lot more than people think. But, we always thought, too, that we would run those for a few years and just see what came of it and whether we wanted to do something on a long-term lease. And I guess for me, it would depend on what that long-term lease would be and what they're proposing to put in there. And of course, which building too, because I've been told by a certain mother with a lot of kids that it's really important that you can see out of the building and see the washrooms outside. So you want to be, if you've got kids at the water park, you want to be cognizant of that. So anyway, but just depending on what it is, certainly, it's probably a discussion we could have.
Yeah, I'm guessing we'd probably have to do an RFP or something like that. But CIO, you want to?
Yeah, there's going to be a report coming to your next regular council meeting on this issue, and it'll highlight the amount of money that we take in on a yearly basis from short-term rentals, what we would anticipate to be able to get on the open market for long-term rentals, and council can make your decision from there.
Okay, thank you.
And That reminded me of something. If we can just back up just a second, report. When we had the delegation for the RCM SAR, I'm wondering, would staff be able to give us a report on what we do for in-kind donations, such as what we do for RCM SAR? What the cost is of that. What we do, like, for example, down at the marina, there's the dragon boats that I believe we give those in kind. I had a note on that, and then I just slipped my mind. So is that something that we can?
Yeah, that's something we can do. And actually, that's a good point, because I should have asked council to request. I imagine you want to request a report in order to approve the SARs, or to at least consider the SARs.
Yeah.
So maybe if we put the motion out for that report on the SARs, and as well as other in kind,
Okay.
then
So I'll put that motion out if somebody wants to second that.
I'll second.
Okay. And does council have anything else to add? Again, sorry that, I'm a little off track with that one, but Councillor Minions?
Yeah, I think you've already said it pretty much, but when he said that the electrical was in kind, it kind of got my mind going. I'm sure it's not a huge cost, but including all it's not in kind, but all the utilities that we would potentially be paying for as well, just to be included in the report, just so we understand, or can even use that for, a good news story of what we're actually supporting.
So are you thinking of in-kind just to do with the marina and that, or in-kind in general that the town does? Because we got the senior center and all that kind of stuff.
In general, because what got me thinking about this was the last agenda, the CAO had it laid out of what we give. Like, example, we give the coalition money, we give this group money, that group money. And in essence, we are giving money to the RCM SAR, but it's in kind. And I think they're a great organization, and there's a lot of things, but, just wondering how much these things are costing the community. And so, yes, throughout the community. So if council does have any, I'm sure the CIO would receive an email to get that information.
Yeah, so I can definitely try and pull that all together. The one warning I'll give is, we'll reach out and try and find what's being done. You tend to find in these sorts of things, so many little things are done everywhere as time goes on. So if people know of things and you want to shoot them to me, that would be very helpful. Otherwise, we'll put together the information we can grab.
Appreciate that. And any other comments on that? Seeing none, so all in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. And going back to the consent agenda, do we have anything else? I just wanted to acknowledge Brooklyn Dunham. It's always nice when we get letters from the young folks in our community, and that was a sweet letter that she wrote us regarding splash parks. And, I do plan to reach out to Brooklyn personally, and she's probably got better handwriting than me, so I'll type mine out. But it's nice that we have that engagement. So Councillor Bissinger, did I see your hand up there? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'll pull out item D if I can.
Item D. So a seconder for that.
Second.
Okay, and so go ahead, Councillor Bissinger.
Sure. And I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, haha. But are we going to be looking at this or not, or are we just avoiding Bill C21? I don't know if we can ask the CEO that question, or if I shouldn't even be asking the question.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it sounds like the feds are downloading this to us, that we have to take responsibility for gun. So go ahead.
Council so municipalities are going to be given some level of control over handguns and what you'd like to do with them. It's not something I plan to bring to council, and I'd suggest, if it is something you're looking for a report on, maybe to request that to be added to the strategic plan, and then we would go from there. But otherwise, it wouldn't be something that administration will be bringing.
So just to the CEO, if I may, so if we do nothing, then it is status quo as it currently is. And then if we do something, then we either restrict it or allow it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all I had for that.
Yeah, and it is kind of a polarizing issue. Is non-action kind of consent of this, or should we be, if we're in disagreement with local government enforcing gun regulations, should we be sending a letter to the federal government saying we don't want any part of this?
Good point.
So the federal government is going to be giving municipalities a tool that you can use should you want to. So if you don't use that tool, things will remain as they are. So I guess you would have three options. One is to just leave things the way they are and stay out of the debate completely. Another option would be to send a letter to the federal government saying, this isn't a municipal issue. This is a federal issue to be decided on. We'd like you guys to deal with the issue. And you can say, we'd like you to deal with it by banning it. We'd like you to deal with it by allowing it, or we just want you to deal with it, leave us out of it. And the third option would be to use the tools that the federal government is giving you and move forward in some level of regulation. So as of right now, unless I receive other direction from council, we would be going with the status quo and not moving this forward in any way.
Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about this bill until we started getting letters about it, and you know, I think it's for places that have a lot of gun violence and, you know, at-home accidents and things like that. It could probably be very useful tool. But Comox, I don't hear a lot of, you know, gun violence going on in Comox, so I don't think it would be our top priority or a priority at all at this point. I think we have some pretty responsible gun owners, and I'm not a gun proponent by any means.
You are now.
So no, if there was a problem, I would be 100% sure. Yeah, let's use those tools. But we don't have a problem. So if we have a problem, awesome, great. We've got the tools to use them, and other places are probably, you know, happy about that. But yeah, I don't think it's an issue here at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, I'll just go back. I don't know if there's much we can do about it, but I am concerned for the airsoft industry because you know, it's a huge industry across the country, and you know, C21 is dragging these into this bill. So, you know, I don't know what we can do at our level to stop the bill from going through, but status quo, I guess, is what I'm hearing. But I'm just wondering if there's a larger movement to stop the bill altogether.
Yeah, like UBCM, I don't know if they're planning on doing anything because this hasn't been passed yet, I believe. So it's still up in the House for debate.
I'm not aware of UBCM taking any stance on it because there are definitely members within UBCM and probably some strong voices that are in favor of having these type of powers within the municipality.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Maybe they are unified. I don't think that to be the case.
Okay.
So I'm not sure there is going to be anything coming from UBCM.
I was just wondering. Okay, and Councillor Swift there. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I would be in favor of sending a letter to say, I think this is a federal issue. It doesn't make sense to me for municipalities to have to deal with this because potentially, as Councillor McGowan points out, we don't have a lot of violence here, but it does open the door to communities such as Courtenay and Cumberland and Comox all dealing with it differently, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think sending a letter to the federal government to say, please deal with this and leave us out of it would be what I would like to do.
Is that a motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
Motion. That could be a motion if we could write it up better.
Okay, but I guess, okay, so we'll deal with this motion because we're still talking, it's part of the same thing. So yeah, so any discussion on that, Councillor Grant?
Yeah, I think I agree that this is a federal decision and that's where it should stay. But to Pat's point, you know, I haven't studied this very much, but I know that what you're saying is that the soft gun or the air gun or whatever it is a big industry, and it starts to get onto paintball guns and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so for me, that's a tough piece. And I don't know if there's a way you could send a letter to say, leave everything alone, but let the air gun guys continue to have their sport. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but really it's you know, this is a federal issue. Because if you think like, you know, I know a guy that's got some guns in Victoria, and he goes to the range and he does them all properly. But if Victoria has a rule and then Nanaimo has a different rule, can you drive through Nanaimo with them while you go to the range in Courtenay? And all of that nonsense starts, right? So I think this is one of those things where this is a place where a federal ruling is actually the best way to do it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that?
So just one question from me. Based on the motion that we have on the floor, I would interpret council's direction to just send a letter to the federal government informing them that we think these decisions are best made within the federal regulatory framework and not taking a position on what that position should be, right? Just that this shouldn't be left to the municipalities.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, sounds like we're all in favor with that. So any other questions? So all in favor of that motion? All right, and that's carried. Thank you. And do we have anything else from the consent agenda that we'd like to pull out? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. We'll move on to unfinished business, and that is the strategic planning and actions items be received and filed for information.
Move receipt.
Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And Councilor McGowan? Yeah, okay, good, thanks. All right, and now we go on to rezoning application RZ 20-1. That's at 468 and 490 Anderton Road. So that Comox bylaw 1944 be given third reading. So we have a first and second. Are any questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And number 2 is that the rezoning application for RZ 20-1, 468 and 490 Anderton Road be given, that's agreement authorization bylaw 1953, be given third reading.
Second.
Any questions on that?
Just,
Councillor Bissinger, yeah.
is this different than doing actual adoption? Like, is adoption going at another meeting, or is this it?
To the planner, how would you like to explain that? You're mute.
Thank you. Yes, this is different than adoption. There's outstanding items, registration of covenants on title. So once that's done and they're registered on title, the bylaws will be brought back to council for consideration of adoption.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? All in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Just making a note there. All right, and then we go to capital and special projects. Number 1 that council approves. Well, let's see, let's just back up a little bit here. So we got some recommendations, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we have alternatives to the recommendations. So for number 1, we're going to deal with Schedule A. So what is council's purview on that? CIO?
I'd suggest that you move the recommendation, and then if you want to make changes, you would just add or subtract, and then you pass as amended.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, so we've moved recommendation number 1, first and seconded. So for discussion, Councillor Minions.
Just wanted to have a quick discussion item on the Buena Vista sidewalk. It looks like the 50,000 kind of planning and research would happen potentially in 2021 and the sidewalk in a future year in the 5-year plan. If the transportation study is still kind of in completion stages and we don't have a final decision on what that would look like, does it make sense to still go forward with the research and engineering and planning if it hasn't been decided? I'm more putting that out there to council on that, if it makes sense to spend the 50,000 before the final decision has been made, if anyone would want to look at that item personally.
Do we CAO or do we want to hear from Shelley on that one?
I think that was also more of a council discussion potentially. And I guess could also be staff on that if it makes sense to do the research, because that would help our decision. But to me, I think we should discuss if that's something we want to put off one more year or not.
Yeah, because I know myself, I'm hearing kind of split sidewalk, no sidewalk, and it's a lot of money to go in. And, you know, so Councillor Bissinger, sorry, you've been.
Yeah, I know. I asked this question to Shelley Ashfield. last week, exactly, basically that if we have a different finding from the traffic management or traffic calming study going or report, if that money could be used for something else. And she did say yes. And Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically like the 50K would be based on that traffic calming study. There'd probably be a couple options. We would do an option analysis, a design, and then the following year would be to implement whatever that solution might be. So it might be sidewalks, it might not be sidewalks, it might be speed bumps or whatever. So I think it's kind of earmarked in the future, and that 500K obviously could change depending on what the recommendation from the report is. I don't know, Shelley, if you, and if that's the case, then I would definitely support that. I don't know, Shelley can add to that.
So currently how we have it in the budget right now is for the design of the sidewalks for 2021 with construction of the sidewalks in 2022. So that was, a discussion with Councillor Bissinger is that we could defer the sidewalk portion and wait till we get the traffic calming study done first, and then because it might not be sidewalks, it might be something else. So that's definitely up to council's decision if you want to wait till after, and then we can revisit it at next year's financial plan potentially, if that's the direction council wants to take.
Okay, that sounds good. But Councillor Grant has his hand up.
So Shelley, does deferring mean taking it out of the plan for now and then possibly putting it back in? Because if you're doing a 5-year plan and you bump it out for a year, it doesn't really make any difference.
Yeah, we can do either way, whichever direction council wants to do. You can just take it off the table altogether, or you can defer it till 2022, just maybe for the design. It's totally up to council of what you want to do. If you want to just take it off the books completely and wait for the traffic calming report to come back, that's fine too.
So I guess my next question is to Jordan, because I get really confused with how we're doing this now. I used to think I actually knew a little bit about this, but it's really confusing. If we take this and bump it out to 2022, it really doesn't affect the plan in any way, does it? Like, unless we take it right out of the plan, it doesn't really have an effect.
An effect on
our tax increases.
So whether it stays in or stays out, it won't have an effect on your tax increase at all until we get the asset management stuff sorted out. And then if you move forward and use the project, then it will make a difference. Or if it's on the books, it will make a difference once it gets constructed. It's in no other item, and this is just kind of reading the room on council, but on no other item do we have something in here where we go, we're not really sure if we want to do this. It's more of, this is something we intend to do. You don't have to do it in the future, but it is something that we intend to do. With this project, since it's been added, because these came a long time ago, council's had further discussions, I would suggest it's probably worth removing it completely from the budget right now, going and finding what you want to do. And then if it is something that you'd like to have included, we'll include it in the next budget rather than push it off as a maybe. I think it would be better to just remove it, find out what you want to do, and then it can come back in at a later date if you decide on the sidewalk.
Okay. Should we move that?
Do you want to?
Well, we should remove that.
Yeah, and so so we're moving that, and then a seconder on that.
Second.
Councillor Grant. So for any further discussion on that, and that is just removing that sidewalk out of the budget completely at this time.
So to be clear, we're going to leave the 50,000 in, but we're going to take the 500 out.
I was just going to ask that. So CAO, can you clarify, or we
will all the whole item will be taken
out? The whole item will be removed, 50,000 including. So any other? Shelley's got her eraser there, I can see already. Any other questions? Councillor McKenna?
Yep, thanks. So just regarding we're still on Schedule A, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, my understanding is in reviewing all these reports, and maybe I'm wrong, but in reviewing everything is if we kind of bless something, it's probably just going to follow into the budget, and then we're going to either have the discussion there or we've already had the discussion, and so it'll be easier to pass or pass something through. So that's my line of thinking when I looked at all of these schedules. And so I have a question again around the vehicle GVWR.
Okay, so,
it's 350K.
Pat, sorry to interrupt you. We're still on that one item there.
Sorry. Yeah, okay, yeah.
So
Yeah, all in
there's
favor of moving the Buena Vista out. Sorry.
Okay, so no further discussion on that? So all in favor of removing the 50,000 and the 500,000? Okay, and that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor McKenna, sorry about that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. Well, I'll save myself a lot of speaking now. I just want that vehicle if we move it or, move it to a subsequent year, like my suggestion would be to move that vehicle to 2023 and actually, maybe it'll be the same conversation around the lawnmowers. But am I right in assuming that if we bless something in 2021, it's just going to kind of be a rubber stamp when we get to budget time?
CAO, go ahead.
So the reports, anything that you approve today, you will be giving staff spending authority to move forward with. So this would be your, barring some other circumstances, this would be your final opportunity to remove something from the budget that you wouldn't want to be completed.
Okay, and I'll just fall on my own sword, and maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand this, but why doesn't it affect taxes?
So it does affect taxes, but what we're doing this year is we're taking care of the operational deficit that we have. So right now we have a yearly operational deficit for our core budget that we need to make sure is addressed. And so that's what we're going out and we're making sure that we are able to fund. And so now that we're separating out our core spend and our capital and special project spends, we're just making sure that we're funding our core spends. As we move through the rest of the year, we're going to identify what our capital spends are going to need to be. Now, what happens with your capital spending is sometimes you have a $10 million a year capital spend like this year, and some years you're going to have like a $1 million capital spend like last year. So you don't want to have to go out to the public and say, okay, well, we need 10 million from you this year, but next year is going to be 1, because you're going to jump your taxes up and down when you do that. So what we're going to develop for council is a smoothed out amount that's going to average the amount of capital spending you need to account for every year. So that's the amount that you're going to have to go out and get in taxes. Because that's not been done, what we're going to do this year is draw out of our reserves in order to pay for the amount of spending that we don't have the ability to collect from taxes. And as we develop our yearly smooth capital amount, so as we figure out how much we need to set aside for our yearly capital spends, that's going to need to be funded from taxes. We're just not there yet. So it's the decisions that you make today will impact the amount of taxes to be collected in the future. It just won't impact it today. I'm not sure if that's added any clarity.
Yep. Yeah, that's added a lot of clarity. And so any financial decisions we make today will affect 2021 budget and will affect the Comox taxpayer.
Yeah, any money that's spent today or spent this year will not be there to put into our savings in the future to offset our capital depreciation. So any money, I guess the best way to say it is we don't have enough money saved to pay for our capital depreciation. So any more that we spend is going to have to be collected in the future. The difference with what you're going to find is this year with our operational deficit, that is something that is every year and has to be funded each and every year. When you get into the capital amounts, that total amount of spending is going to be averaged out over 30 years. So on the capital side, let's say you overspent this year by $1 million on your capital. You're going to smooth that cost out over 30 years. So it's not going to be as big of an impact versus if you underfund your operational side, that has to be accounted for right away. If you underfund your operational side by $1 million, you're going to have to pay that next year. So that's the big difference between what you're looking at right now and what you approved before. Is any decision you make on this is going to have that 30 or 50 year waiting on it. So it's not going to have as big of an impact up and down on the taxes as the operational does.
So what we're approving now what you're saying is it will all be capitalized over a term.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not actually spending $120,000 for a lawnmower. We're going to amortize that over a 25-year period.
Yeah, so we will pay, we will pay $120,000 this year to the company we're buying the lawnmower from. We will charge back the taxpayer over the total life of that lawnmower. So if the lawnmower lasts 12 years, we will charge the taxpayers $10,000 a year for that lawnmower.
And I see Councillor Grant's hand up, and I think there's going to be more discussion. So I'm going to let Councillor Grant go, and then I'll come back.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Grant, go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to get my head around this because this is a lot different than how we've done it in the past. But it seems to me if we take $500,000 out for Buena Vista, what you're saying is that we're going to take that money and put it in reserves, and that will help us out in the future.
Correct.
So once we get straightened out with our plan and we know where we're going, we know how much we owe. If we were at that point, let's say 3 years from now, to take $1 million out of this plan, would it then have an effect?
Yes. So because this year we're not going out and taxing for the capital amounts that we're bringing in, that's why it's not impacting the taxes when you're adding or taking things away from your capital. So we have that direct connection between operating. If operating moves up, taxes has to move up with it. Because we don't have that connection between capital and taxes this year, this is moving up and the taxes aren't changing. That's going to change. That's going to change next year, the year after. It depends when council gets ready to do the asset management. So that's why I'm saying the decisions you make now will impact the amount of money that needs to be collected in the future, but it won't impact the amount of taxes to collect this year.
So in the future, let's forget this year because this seems to be the anomaly. But when we get going, because we have a 5-year plan, if we were to, like, let's use Pat's lawnmowers, for example, if you move those 1 year, that doesn't really affect your 5-year plan.
It will change. So you've got to divide the cost of the asset over how long you're going to have it. So let's say if you have a lawnmower, $120,000 lawnmower that you tend to use for 10 years. So that lawnmower costs $12,000 a year to have. If you're able to get an extra year out of it, you basically save yourself about $11,000, $10,000 that way, right? So if you push out an asset, that's how much you're going to save that amount once, which is different from when you're looking at the sidewalk. If you're looking at the sidewalk, that's $500,000. We don't have it right now. So that's a $20,000 per year. If it's over, we'll just stick with 10 years. So that would be $50,000 a year. When you installed that sidewalk, you would have to increase the taxes by $50,000 a year in order to fund the asset replacement on that sidewalk. So it's different from extending the life of something is going to save you, you're going to get an extra $10,000 out of it. So that's going to cause that decrease. And then not installing the capital is going to, or installing the capital is going to increase the total contributions by, $500,000 over 10 years, $50,000 a year, or $500,000 over 20 years, $25,000 a year. So the amount of capital that you add into the community will have a huge impact on the amount of money we need to go out and collect, a huge impact on the amount we have to go out and collect.
Okay, so in the past, and we did this with our public works building for years, it was always on year 5 of the plan, and we would always just put it out to year 6, and $2 million would fall out of our plan, and then the next year we'd put it in and we'd kick it out again until the building finally fell over and we actually had to do something about it. But that was a way that we used to keep balancing our budget or keeping our taxes in line, having a placeholder for something we thought we needed but wasn't quite ready to be done, as a town hall would be, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
So that will not impact the amount of money you have to collect. If you have something in the budget in 3 years from now, you don't need to start collecting the money this year in order to pay for it. When you install that piece of equipment next year, you're going to have to pay for the yearly costs for it, right? So going back to the sidewalk, If you installed if you have the sidewalk in here in 2024, that's not going to change the amount that you have to collect for your capital this year. Once the sidewalk's installed, you make that big first payment, and then the next year is when the amount you have to collect goes up, and it'll go up by 500,000 over a 20-year sidewalk. You're going to have to collect $25,000 more next year in order to fund the replacement of that piece of infrastructure. So what the difference is going to be, and council's going to see this in the reports that come, is you're going to say, okay, well, here's a piece of infrastructure. We'd like to have it. You know, we have enough money in reserves in order to get it, but also we're going to have to increase the amount we collect next year in taxes in order to pay for this. It might also be, hey, listen, we're able to get a grant to fund this project. We'd like to do it. But then you're going to realize, oh, that grant's only going to pay for this once. We need to save every year after in order to do it. So one of the things I always like to say is that in a municipality, infrastructure is a subscription you have to pay for every year, because we have to continue going it. Businesses can plan to leave the places that they're leasing. They can plan for their buildings to fall down. It's actually built into the models in a lot of cases. In the municipality, once we install that infrastructure, it's a permanent subscription for which we need to keep paying for every year.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Minions?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to that question. So it sounds like it's basically once the installation happens within the year after we pay for it. In asset management, with the kind of tax smoothing that's going to happen, will we be paying on what's in the asset management plan, or will it be the same, that it's not until the actual decision and the, you know, actual cost of the project, and that's how the smoothing will happen? Or whatever goes in the plan, whether it's done or not, is what we have to pay for?
So that's going to be the long conversations that we're having with council. This is going to take a long time to get to. And so council is going to take a look at the infrastructure that you have, what you want to keep, what level you want to keep it at. And then once it's brought into existence, that's when we would start to look at paying for it over its lifespan. But if you think again about a $500,000 sidewalk over 20 years, the smoothed amount is $25,000, right? So if you had two sidewalks of that length, $1 million worth of sidewalks, you need to start collecting that $50,000, and that's going to be the next year, because that is the smoothed amount. The smoothed amount is the $50,000 in that case.
Okay, thank you. And follow-up? Did you? Oh, okay. Yeah, Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Yeah, so the headline in the newspaper today is that, you know, Courtenay City Council approves a 1.86% property tax increase. So what's the headline going to be for Comox, Jordan?
So those decisions are going to be made by council at your next meeting on how much you want to go out and fund. So we know operationally, so this, you know, today we're looking at the capital and special projects. Let's put that aside for a minute, because that's not going to impact this year's taxes. So we know that operationally there is about a 10% upward pressure that we need to fund, either through increasing taxes or decreasing services. Now, the story we are going to attempt to tell is that 8% of that increase is due to RCMP costs. It's not due to the town of Comox. So if we can control and do do well on our messaging, hopefully what is relayed out to the public is the town of Comox passes a 2.3% tax increase, but council decreases that to actually a negative amount, because I'm just going based on the conversations council's been having. You have your public safety reserve and COVID restart reserve. You're actually looking at collecting from the town a negative amount for the town itself, but then it's going to be positive because you have to factor in the RCMP costs. So that's the story we're going to attempt to tell based on the decisions council makes in your next meeting.
And Erin's scratching her head right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Pat, I think when you read that story, if I'm reading that story correctly too, they're using COVID relief money to buy that tax rate down as well.
Which I've been saying all along.
Which is a fine. I mean, you can use your COVID relief money for that, but I think that's where the communities are. That's how they're bringing it in at that number.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they'd be wise for us to use a portion of it to do that.
Well, I think, are we getting off topic here or are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was, I mean, we talked about that last week where we used 200,000 from our safety reserve and 200,000 from COVID relief. And then put another 200,000 aside for next year to do the same thing so that we don't have a big increase that year as well.
Yeah.
And just as a basic plan for next week, that's what we had talked about anyway.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
Councilor, your hand up.
So I'll go back to the vehicle that's.
Sorry,
that- Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, Councilor Minion has a hand up, but you want to finish off your line of thought there, so go ahead.
Yeah, like, so we're capitalizing a purchase of $350,000 on a dump truck that we absolutely need to buy. And like, it's such a large amount of money for a vehicle, and we just bought a $200,000 garbage truck, and now we're looking at a $350,000 plow, for lack of a better word, I guess, or a service truck that can be used as a plow. And so, but I think the tricky part of this whole conversation is all this capitalized costs. It's still cash outlay. It's still going to come out, from somewhere, even though it's going to be capitalized to our taxpayer, right? It's still money being spent. It's just it's a big cost, right?
Yeah, let's see, CIO, go ahead.
Yeah, and just so on the vehicles, there's actually two. There's $150,000 unit and one $200,000 unit. But to the overall point that you're making, this is maybe how I would encourage council to think about this. You have the units that respond to do different things. So if council were to make the choice to not replace the units this year, the reason staff is recommending their replacement is we believe that at some point they're going to break down. And so when council sees that, you have to take a look at that and say, well, if this unit was to break down, what's the impact going to be on the ability of the town to provide service? And if you're comfortable with that risk, so I'm just going to go to grass cutting because I think that's an easy example. We've got the money in there for a lawnmower. So we put it in there and we say, hey, listen, we think this lawnmower is going to break down. If it does break down, there's a couple things that may happen. The town may end up spending money to fix it, which we're just going to have to buy a new lawnmower the next year. So that's kind of throwing good money after bad. So we may do it that way. Or what may happen is we go, listen, we're okay if the lawnmower goes down this year. We're okay having to wait 2 to 3 months in order to cut our grass. Or we're okay at that point of hiring a contractor to come in and do the grass cutting for us and putting that money out and purchasing later. So those are the risks, right? The risks are either that council's okay with the risk of the town having to pay repair costs and then buy a new unit. So that's an overall increase in their spending, to hire a contractor for the rest of the year and then buy a new unit. So that's an overall increase in spend, or to just let that service not get done this year. So in this case, we would let the grass go really long and we're okay with the grass being long until we're able to get the new unit to come in. So those are the risks associated with it. And what's the benefit? The benefit's going to be, instead of amortizing the cost out of that unit over 10 years, you're going to amortize the cost of the unit over 11 years. So you're going to put that $10,000 possible $10,000 benefit against the risk to your services or the risk to the increase in cost to continue the services. And that's really where it comes down to is council comfortable with that service not being provided should the equipment not be able to meet the needs because it's broken? So again, just going back to cutting the grass, if the lawnmower is to break down, are you okay with the grass not being cut until we're able to replace it? Maybe you are. If the service truck goes down and we're not able to respond to the different water issues and sewer issues, and we have to let those go, that's kind of a higher risk because people may not be able to use their water and sewer the way that they normally do. That would be the service level risk that council would be taking on by not replacing. And so that's really where it comes to council on what service level risk are you willing to take with these pieces of equipment.
Okay, Councilor McKenna.
Yep. Thank you. Very good explanations, Jordan. And so, I guess I'm willing to take some risk, but I don't know what risk I'm willing to take because I actually don't know when we're being asked to approve a $350,000 spend, we don't know where the life is of this equipment. We assume, and we have to make an assumption with good intent, that staff is telling us these units need to be replaced. That's kind of where I'm trying to put myself. Can I ask a question around asset values? And use the lawnmower as an example. We currently have a lawnmower. Lawnmower is ending its life. It's nearing its end of life. It probably still has value. What happens to that old lawnmower?
So generally, we will do a couple things, and if you want to know specifically about the lawnmower, I'll ask, but I'll give you the general things that will happen when you're looking at equipment, end-of-life equipment. So one, they can be held back by the municipality as a spare. So if you get the new piece of equipment and it breaks down, you're able to bring that out for usage. Or if for some reason you have a really high demand, you still have a piece of useful machinery that can come out for a little while until it completely breaks down. That's one thing that can happen. Another thing that can happen is that you can put it up on provincial sites for bids and get money back on them. So that's another item that'll happen. And in other cases, there's no value, there's nowhere to store them. So then they'll go to the junkyard. So those are the three things that'll happen depending on the piece of equipment. I'm not sure, maybe Shelley, either you or Andrew can comment on this, specifically the lawnmower, what the plan for that would be.
Hi. The lawnmower itself, I'll just give you an example from last year. We bought a new tractor. We had a 1994 Ford tractor that we use regularly in the parks division. Last year, we bought a new tractor, and part of putting out the RFP for a new tractor was for people to submit bids for a trade-in value of that tractor. So the old tractor we actually got, even though it was a 1994, we got $11,000 back for that tractor, and then we put it towards the purchase of the new tractor. So that helped us drop the actually purchase price by about a third of that tractor last year. So the lawnmower this year is one. Just the air conditioning doesn't work. We looked into getting it fixed. The cost of repairs to do that was way beyond kind of the value of the tractor. Of the lawnmower. So now we have a closed cab lawnmower where we've had to remove all the doors and everything for it to make it functional and safely operating by our staff, so they're not in a fishbowl cooking all day. So whether we would get the value out of that lawnmower, I can't actually tell you, because we usually put it out as part of our RFP for purchasing a new lawnmower. So that's kind of where we're at with the lawnmower one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. Councillor Minions.
I'll try to keep this quite short because I think we're almost through Schedule A. Looking through all the schedules, there was very few, except for sidewalks and playgrounds, and for me, vehicles as well. I think because every year we get this request to spend, between $200,000 and $500,000 on vehicles, instead of feeling like we're in the weeds on it, for me, I think it would be helpful to know roughly how many vehicles we have operating, I guess almost like asset management on the vehicles, which is hopefully to come. But I'm just cognizant of, we're adding $350,000 to this year. Does that mean I'm also, we're also approving in 15 years, that's another $350,000. So when we talk about level of service, I do think all we hear is that Comox, snow plows are the best, which is amazing. Our roads are really great. Our landscaping is great. And so to me, I'm tying level of service at this kind of trip, 5-star Comox service. It's somewhat related back to our vehicles. And I just think the cost of vehicles is getting very expensive with gas and maintenance. So instead of just blanket saying yes to the 350, I wish I knew a little bit, without getting into the weeds, the number of vehicles we were operating. And is that an area that maybe level of service could go from 110% down to a 95%? I don't know. But so if there was a way to get a little more information on kind of the transportation costs to the town of Comox, and know, do both of those vehicles need to get approved this year? Or for me, like you were saying, is what is the cost if one does break down? I would say that if staff could clarify if one of those two is an immediate need, or I just think transportation and level of service is hugely tied, and adding $350,000 to the budget is adding a lot more to the budget in the interim and in 15 years. So I would be wanting to know if either of those is a real risk to town on waiting on to get more information about how we're running transportation.
Craig, are you able to comment?
Wrong button again. So I would say the unit number 4, which is the dump truck, and it's our salter. The existing truck that we have is a little bit of a lighter weight vehicle. It's been doing our salt route for a number of years, and it's really getting close to the end of its end of life. We've put in a lot of money in the last year with the salter, dealing with electrical issues, with rust that results from that. In addition, it probably wasn't the proper truck to be purchasing at the time when it was purchased. Technically, we are over legal weight when we have it loaded with salt. So the idea with the new dump truck is to actually bring it into compliance with road rules and be able to have a proper sized vehicle. It would come with a new plow on the front. It would come with a new salting box and everything else. As I said, we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time in the last year dealing with that plow, with that truck, and with that salter, and they are very, very close to the end of their life. I don't know that we would get another winter out of those. Additionally, similar to Andrew's comment, we would use that as a trade-in going forward. So another winter on that would again bring down any trade-in value that we may have on that as well. So it would decrease the trade-in value for that. In terms of the service truck, it's about 12 years old as it sits right now. So it's also getting to the end of its life. It again is getting to the end. We could probably get another year out of that one, but it is something that we do need to replace in the nearest future. In terms of overall vehicles, part of the concern that we have and part of the joy that we have this year is COVID. We've been lucky to have the vehicles that we have and be able to have single occupancy in the vast majority of our vehicles. Just from a COVID health and safety point of view, that is one of the things that WorkSafe BC recommended right from the start. So we have been able to, with the fleet that we have, be able to send out our parks crews and our public works crews for the vast majority of the time in individual occupancy vehicles. That means that we've been sending out the VACOL to do to jobs where it's not needed. We've been sending the big dump trucks out to jobs that aren't needed as well, just to make sure that we've got single people in those vehicles. We are going to come up against a vehicle crunch coming forward with our summer students coming back on this summer. We don't have any spare vehicles in the public works and parks departments as it sits right now to be able to share around. So we are going to be getting to the point where we have to share vehicles going forward. In terms of overall numbers of vehicles, I don't off the top of my head know the exact number. But again, we've got those vehicles are being used on a daily basis. And as it sits with COVID right now, they're not necessarily being used for the use intended.
Gordon?
Okay.
Let Maureen go. She hasn't.
Councillor Swift and Grant. And thanks, Craig.
Thanks. I guess I would hesitate to remove these vehicles or try and extend their life any further. These are core services that we provide with our water and sewer and our grass cutting and our snow plowing. And I would hate for the salt truck not to be able to get out on the roads if and when we had a snowfall. So I hear Councillor McKenna's thoughts that he's willing to take some risk, and I guess we're all willing to take some risk. I just would hate for it to happen in these areas. The other thing that has crossed my mind is, I mean, ordering new vehicles takes a long time now. So if you put the order in today, would you have any idea how long it would take before you would actually receive it?
Craig?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the time frame would be from RFP to delivery. The dump truck and the salt truck would probably be the longer lead item. because there is a bit of customization that would have to go on with it to get the proper salter, to get the plow attachments and such. However, dump trucks are sold on a fairly regular basis as well. So I don't know at the end of the day what the timeline would be, but it should be available before next winter.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thanks. So I think asset management is something that probably doesn't happen in about 90% of the communities in this country. And we're actually quite a ways ahead of the game on most. I can see pretty clearly that it's the right way to go, but I think it's pretty painful just getting there. So, you know, I think we're really on the right track, and I think that we really need to follow down this road, but getting there is going to be a bit of a stretch. My question on the vehicles is, do we ever look at leasing vehicles? It seems to me if we're amortizing vehicles out over a time period, it may make sense to lease them rather than own them and just turn them back every 5 years.
CAO, or do we want to have?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that calculation's ever been done. In municipalities, specialty pieces of equipment tend to go for leases, but the pieces of equipment that you need continually tend to be cheaper through outright purchase than lease. But I'm not sure. Craig or Shelley, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think you're right. I think the specialty, these equipment is a lot harder to lease. I think Clive was going to mention something in regards to the cost breakdown. Just leasing a personal vehicle, I find it much more expensive to lease than owning. I don't know if you have anything more to add there, Clive. I think I saw your hand up.
Sure. Cost lease, buy versus lease. It's cheaper for the municipality with its reserves to purchase over leasing. That's sort of a model most municipalities will use, and we use that model here. There's 61 vehicles in the fleet, covering the fire all the way through to the parks department. So I was just going to look at the value. When you're looking at the spend of, you know, up to $500,000 a year on the value of the fleet, that is probably, you know, $300,000 to $500,000 a year would be normal for the size of our fleet. This is not an unusual spend amount to maintain the fleet. So we have roughly about 350 that we want to put to the reserve for the fleet replacement. These are just replacements, they're not new equipment.
Okay, thank you, Clive. Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone for all the answers and stuff. You know, you're asking 5 or 6 people who drive like Honda CRVs or you know, like Pintos, you know, and so we don't have a reference of value. And it's hard because, you know, we're 2 years elected, Councillor Grant, Councillor Swift, Mayor Arnott they have more experience with this. And the first 2 years of our elected life, we were in a completely different process. And so I think my job as an elected official is just to ask questions. And so I'm getting good answers, and I thank you for that. The last question I have, and then I'll leave it alone. Do we ever put out to tender snow plowing and or landscape services? Is there a value in our municipality doing that? Like, I know other municipalities do it across Canada. I don't know if we do it in certain areas.
I'm not aware, but the CAO, maybe you can answer that. I think there might be some union things to go with that.
Yeah, I would say part of that would have to be a discussion with council on changes you'd like to see to the union agreement moving forward. We don't have the ability to contract out work that is already being done by a union member. We do not have the ability to contract out, except if we were to negotiate that with the union or during collective agreement bargaining. So that's something that we can look at with our collective agreement expiring in the near future, if that's somewhere council wants to go.
Okay,
yeah, it was just a simple question. There never seems to be an easy answer. So
no.
You know, I would be yeah, I mean, on the vehicle thing, I think I beat the dead horse, and I think it seems like it needs to be included.
Yeah, just a quick comment. So generally, when you're looking at contracting out services, they can be, and the town does a little bit of that, right? We have some janitorial services that are contracted out. You generally don't want to contract out services that become in a high demand in a short amount of time, like snow clearing, because what will happen is all the snow plows in the whole area from the private fleets are going to be needed at the exact same time. So you're going to be going in and trying to outbid everybody else at the time where everybody has the power, because nobody needs, especially in Comox, you don't need a snowplow 3 days later, it's all melted. You need it right at the time it's falling, and that's the most expensive time to go out and source that from private industry.
Sounds like a Cumberland Ridge answer.
Yeah, and in my other line of work, that's one of the issues that we fall in. We have a lot of contracts. We don't have any people dedicated to that. So if we ran into that issue for snow removal, we're waiting in line to get people's parking lots moved out. We're paying $75 for a doorknob to be changed, those kinds of things, because we don't have the people. So yeah, the contracting. But Councillor McKenna, I just want to thank you. You had some really good questions. You're making people think, and that's what this is all about, to be transparent, to be out there, and just to lay this on the line. So I do appreciate all the questions that have been brought forward. So thank you. And to staff too, so far. We're not done with you yet, but so far you're doing good. So do we have anything else that we want to bring out for discussion there? Councillor McGowan? You're mute. You're on mute. There you
go. So I was just looking for a little clarity on Schedule A, the very first thing. In 2023, there's a Torrance servicing plan. But then in Schedule B, there's a Torrance main to come in 2021. So I was just wanting to clarify if that's two different parts of Torrance, or if we're putting in a main 3 years or 2 years before we're actually servicing the area, or have a plan to service the area.
Maybe to Shelley, do you want to answer that one? Or?
Yeah, the Torrance main is part of the, that's the main that we're putting in coordination with the resurfacing of the Balmoral and Torrance section. So we're getting that main in at the same time as we're paving, so that we don't have to put it in later. So that's just future planning. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I wondered. Okay. But the main and the servicing, that they are connected in that way? Like it's the same kind of place?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, so on Schedule A, the very last item on page 115, which is page 2 of the thing, we have Beaufort Avenue, and we're talking Church to Norden, addition of bike lanes, road widening, etc. And it's about $1.3 million over 2 years. If that were a route that our sewer line were to go, is there any possibility of getting that paid for as we're going to dig that road up to put a sewer pipe in?
Maybe to Shelley? Is that who?
I'm open to anybody answering that says they're going to pay for all of it.
Okay, Shelley, we want the magic answer that they're going to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm going to try. That's definitely a project that we're going to be working very closely with the CVRD on their conveyance project coming through, so we can make sure that we coordinate those projects and see what we can get.
Okay,
so we might be able to take $1.3 million out of the budget, but not affect it in any way. Just kidding.
Okay. All right. Anything further on Councillor Grant? McKenna, you're mute again.
I'm muted. Can I make a motion to approve Schedule A with the removal of Buena Vista Sidewalk?
Second.
Sure. So let me go. So to CAO on this, you have recommendations, then you have one, and then you have alternatives to the recommendation be the first motion. So would we be doing that so Schedule A would be moved with the exclusion of?
So council, you have a motion on the floor to approve Schedule A. You then have passed amending motion to remove the sidewalk.
Okay.
So right now, the motion you have on the floor is to pass Schedule A with the amendment to remove the sidewalk. So that's on the floor already. So if you are to vote in the affirmative, you will pass Schedule A with no sidewalk.
Okay. So we had a mover and a seconder on that. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So for discussion, do you want to talk about vehicles, Pat? Or okay, you're on mute. But okay. So seeing no further comments or questions on that, all in favor of that? And that's everybody. Thank you. It's unanimous. Appreciate that. And now we're going to move on to Schedule B. Okay, seconder. Second, and for discussion for Schedule B. This is drainage, water, and sewer. Councilor McKenna.
Yeah, universal water metering obviously is the biggest number on there. Has there been a cost benefit study done for universal water metering at the town of Comox? And can that be shared with us at some point? I wish I knew more about universal water metering. I know it's a polarizing issue. I've heard a lot about it tonight, which is great information. And so, is there a huge benefit? And the other thing I think about is when I hear 3,000 out of 5,000 households have it, I'm like, why does it cost $4 million?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know this is under, what are we looking at? Projects that are funded at least partially from grants or carryover. But Councillor Grant, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so you've hit on a topic that's been a sore point at council for many years, and it's I think it requires a sort of a sit down at a meeting and go over the whole process to where we are and how we got to where we are. Originally, the amount of money we needed for water meters was about $10 million. And it was decided at that time, or my thoughts on it always were, well, that's fine, but we should fund that with grant money if we're going to go ahead with that. We've kind of done a quasi in between on it, but your question is the one that's been asked over the years many times. So I think that we need to sit down and really get council up to speed with how we charge it, why we do it, and what the benefit is. And I think that's a good discussion for another time, actually. I was going to suggest that when we talked about it earlier.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything after council's reviewed this that they would like to discuss any further? Seeing none, so I guess all in favor of Schedule B as it stands. And yeah, are you in favor, Councillor Grant? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll move. Okay. We are moving to Schedule C. Schedule C is Administration, Development, and Fire. Moved. So we have a mover and we have a seconder. So for discussion for Schedule C, do we have any? Councillor McKenna?
Feel like I'm a one-man band tonight. So I have three questions on Schedule C. The first is website redesign. So for 75,000, I know despite we received a letter from someone today, our website is in desperate need of a redesign. I agree with that. 75,000 seems like a pretty nice number for a contractor to get a website redesign. What does that include, like a length of service on it or something? Like maybe there's and I know it's only 75,000, but it seems like a lot of money when I can get a website built for 1,000. I understand the functionality that you want is different, so maybe somebody could speak to that.
Yeah, CAO, do you want Clive to speak to that, or you speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So the cost is likely to come in around that much. I've been involved in another municipal website design, which won't be quite as extensive as this one is, and the costs are quite high. The amount of work that has to go into the back end in order to do these are, it's quite a bit. So when you're looking at those websites that cost, about $1,000, I think you can even get them cheaper now. They're plug and play. They are already designed. You can't really change much on them. This is the format that you have, and then you put the information into it. So we need to build a backbone across all of our different services. So one of the things I like to one of the things that maybe sheds light on this is that we're not going to be building one municipal website. We need to build about 8 municipal websites that all come underneath one umbrella, because each department needs their own. And that's why the cost gets so much. It's not one website, it comes to 8. You will generally get a couple years worth of service and guarantees on it as well. So if something breaks down, if it's not working, but where you design this as well too, is that internally we are able to do the updates on it moving forward. So if something breaks down on the functionality, that would be the responsibility of the provider to fix. But it's not something that we need to go back to them and say, okay, well, we need to make this change, you need to make that change. Is something that we can do ourselves. So it really just comes down to the fact that we have to build so many different websites across all the different services here. Now, something that is encouraging is the provincial government has just put out a grant to help municipalities fund new permitting and process modules. So that may help us decrease the costs on this a little bit. But I would, if you want to get the nice type of websites that you would see in another municipality, and I think council expects, this price is unfortunately what it's going to cost.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I've gone on Cumberland's website a few times, quite a few times. It's a nice looking website. You know, ours is a little cumbersome. So thanks for that, Councillor McKenna. Any other questions or comments on Schedule C?
I have one fire engine. So understandably, we need a new fire engine. I get it. The comment is in the note says, we will lose ability to provide fire protection for home insurance purposes. Have we lost that ability, or we will lose it if we don't replace the truck?
We would lose it if we don't replace the truck, but maybe the chief can talk a little bit about what system that is, and you know, even mention some of the conversations that we've been having around changes that you'd like to see to federal and provincial regulations on that.
Right. So for the last many years, we're surveyed by the Insurance Advisory Organization of Canada every few years to rate our community for fire protection. And that in large sets your insurance rates for your commercial businesses or your homes and so on. So Comox many years ago was deemed to have, we need to have 3 operating fire engines that are less than 20 years old to maintain our current rate. Our rate is not the best rate in Canada. To do that, we would have to have a full-time fire department, but we're pretty high up there in terms of good rates. So we, many years ago, has established a plan that every 7 years, basically, we replace one of our 3 fire engines. And we just happen to have one coming up in the next couple of years. It happens to be our only ladder truck, which is also required by the Insurance Advisory Organization that we operate one ladder truck less than 20 years old. So failure to replace these trucks could mean that they could come in, survey us, and insurance rates would jump up significantly in most cases. And that cost to the homeowner may outreach the cost of the taxes to make these changes. As I mentioned, the trucks are rated for 20 years. What we do is we order the truck at year 20 and have it delivered in year 21. So we end up getting an extra year of life out of the trucks. We've done that for many years now. We've had a 20-year capital replacement plan on our trucks for the last 30 plus years. So we're fairly organized with this. We'd love to see, Jordan mentioned federal changes. When you pay your home insurance, there's a portion of that fee that is supposed to go to fire, but it's all captured in taxes to the federal government, and we don't get that back at the local level. So we have no means to really tax back on the insurance fees for that, but it's definitely a truck that we need to replace. The description on that is not quite correct. It's a ladder truck is what we're replacing. We currently have a 65-foot ladder truck, which is built in 2002. And what we call a triple combination. It's a ladder truck as well as a fire engine, as well as a rescue tool. So that ladder can be elevated to a 4th-story deck and you know, rescue people and things like that. So.
Okay. Thanks. Chief, question for you. When you talk about insurance, is that the town's municipal insurance, or would it have an impact on homeowner insurance? Their fire rates, fire insurance would go up, perhaps?
Yeah, it's all of that, Mr. Mayor. It's the it's any insurance we would buy on property, real property like our buildings, but right to every homeowner, to our 5,000 homes, to our several hundred businesses, any commercial building, it affects the rates are established. So as I mentioned, our rates are pretty good. If you go to smaller communities, they would be paying higher insurance rates. As you might know, places like Mount Washington, am I still there?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Places like Mount Washington pay very, very high rates because they didn't have a fire department until recently, and now they've established a pseudo fire department up there, but they're still paying very, very high rates compared to what you would pay in the town of Comox. So again, the only way for us to get better rates would be to hire significantly more full-time firefighters, and the math doesn't work out at that at this point, is that the taxes would have to increase way more than the insurance savings would. But falling down in a rate would be the opposite effect, that we would end up having our homeowners pay more insurance and perhaps less taxes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, awesome.
Councillor, Councillor McKenna, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just my last one. Thanks, Chief. That was awesome. My last question is around the organic garbage bins. Like, the organics program is probably not rolling out in 2021, so I don't see a reason why that should be on the on the 2021 line, that 900,000. And my follow up to that is, it says grant dependent. Do you know if there are grants, or I don't know if it says grant dependent, or that's just my own thoughts. Are there grants available for this type of purchase?
Yeah, so this project is on here because we've submitted a grant already. The reason it's in 2021 is because that's when the grant was available. If we are successful, then we're going to have to figure out a strategy on either how to store these, how to push the purchase off, maybe purchase them and take possession of them at a future date. But the reason it's in here right now is because for the grant availability, we have to have it in the budget this year. So the grant is submitted and we're waiting to hear back on whether or not we're successful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Minions, you had your hand up?
Yeah, my question was roughly around the same. I was just wondering if that was the grant that we had already applied for. And also, I don't think the next Mterra contract is up till 2022. So I just wasn't sure if we've applied for a specific set of bins, but we won't know what Mterra requires because of 2022 and just how that marries itself together. But I think because it's just a place item that's not going to affect budget without the grant, I'm okay with asking that offline since it's not budget related.
Yeah, no, I can answer it right now too. There are unknowns in this, and we're going to have to figure out how all that works. And there needs to be decisions from council on what type of service are going to be provided. And we need to talk to the whole region about what type of services they're going to be looking at in the next RFP that goes out for collection. But again, this was just to capture the deadline. And if we do move forward with bins, I think this is we're looking at about $700,000 that will come to the town of Comox for us to fund that. That won't have to get paid by the taxpayers. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on Schedule C? Seeing none. All in favor of it as a whole? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving to Schedule D, this is recreation, buildings, and parks.
Move D.
Second.
Okay, so for discussion, Councillor McGowan.
I have a couple on this one. The first one is the recreation and parks capacity assessment. You know, I've lived here since I was a teenager off and on, and there's the exact same amount to do as for teenagers here now as there was, you know, 20 some odd years ago. We need a skate park or a pump track or something like that, somewhere that the kids who aren't, you know, getting rides to organized sports can hang out at and be at safely. I don't know that we need a $20,000 study to tell us that.
Maybe Ted wants to talk to that.
I'll jump in real quick on that. And that's totally, so this study would be going out to go out to the community as well as get a professional to find out what type of infrastructure the community is lacking and needs to be built. So this is really, the genesis of this was when council had a presentation from the Soccer Association asking for a new soccer field to be built. And what we're looking at into the future is we likely don't have the funds to build a soccer field and another baseball field and some more tennis courts, as well as a pump track, as well as a skate park. You know, we don't have the funds to do all of those, but my guess is council likely will be able to take a look at fund one, maybe two of those. So how is it that we get to the point where we decide, do we want a skate park or do you want a soccer field? And so this study will help get to that conclusion. Having said that, if council knows what it is you'd like to see in the community, this study is not needed. You can simply give us direction to say, we would like you to find a place for a skate park, and we're not going to build a soccer field. You know, that's completely within council's prerogative as well.
Okay, Councillor McGowan.
Just as a, we do have some soccer fields and baseball fields in town, and they are available all over the valley. And, you know, most of the time, if people are going to, you know, soccer practice or baseball, they've got a ride if they're a teenager or if they're a kid. And so I'm really thinking about those kids who, you know, either aren't into organized sports or don't have a ride, or just, you know, they're in Comox, they need a place to be. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm off on this, but I would say that we need like a skate park or a pump track a lot more than we need another soccer field. Though in the future, all for it, totally cool. But in crunch time, I would go one over the other for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on that I think you are bang on. I mean, I think we saw that last summer when the kids were jumping off the roof, and I went and spoke to some of them, and there is that group of kids that we are missing something. What that something is unknown at this time. You know, the CAO and I think around this table, we talked about maybe a floating dock or something like that. But yeah, we definitely need to look at things that would engage that group of kids. There was that plan that the rec center did a year and a half ago now, and I'm wondering, did we get anything out of that? Maybe to Ted, there was that open house there year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
So that's the site master plan. That plan is still in progress. It was delayed because of COVID. And so we hope to finish that this year, but that plan is just for the Comox Community Center site.
Wow.
And answers questions about what the future building footprint looks like, customer access, and what we do with the tot lot. It doesn't go into the bigger question of what do we do with potential spaces throughout the municipality and what the priority of that use would be.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And Councillor Grant?
Yes. So I think it's important that we kind of prioritize what we do, because as Jordan said, we can't do it all, although I see a need for all of it on there. But I think what happens with these kind of projects is you'll see over the years, grant money comes available for these. And if you're got your priorities set and you can get shovel ready really quickly, you can really jump to the front of the line on grants. So I don't really have a big problem with figuring out what the priority is on this and putting that money in there, because it could actually save us a whole bunch in the long run.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Swift.
Thanks. You know, I hear Councillor McGowan's frustration with just wanting to get on with something. But I think it is important that we get on with the right sort of thing. So I would assume that, I mean, the community likes to be engaged, and I would hope that the youth would also be engaged so that they would have some input into what it is that we actually went forward with. And from where I sit, I really don't know. I mean, we do have soccer fields. I know there's been a lot of interest in a pump track and so on, but I guess I would like to hear from the youth itself. And I would assume that $20,000 study would can take their thoughts into consideration.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments on this? Councillor McKenna, then Minions.
Thanks, Mayor. And so maybe the questions to the CAO, like I know I saw a number $12,500 dedicated to culture. There's nowhere on the capital projects or special projects budget is culture identified as far as any special projects or whatever. Are we doing anything when we come out of COVID? Are we setting something aside, reserves, whatever, to really expand nautical days, one, you know, in 2022, to maybe do something with art in public spaces, to give the community something to look forward to? Where would this be indicated? Would this be on the regular upcoming budget, or would this be in any of these capital or special projects?
So we don't have anything identified for 2022 for those type of items. We would have the regular nautical days or the regular funding going to nautical days into 2022. We are approving some funds this year in 2021 in order to help ensure that regular planning and the lights can be kept on within that group. But there's nothing specifically identified for those issues. I'll throw it out to maybe Andrew or Ted if there's something that you guys know that I'm missing, but I don't think that there's anything targeting that right now.
No, not specifically from my end about, enhancing cultural values and experience going beyond COVID at this point.
And the same for recreation.
To note that some of the cultural spending is under council grants, like $20,000 to Sid Williams Theatre. That's still under council grants. It's not shown under culture, just as a side. But we're going to try to get that showing under culture, the grants that go for cultural purposes.
So my question with that, it looks like I think we're all resigned ourselves that there won't be nautical days this year, and that's unfortunate. But we did have $25,000 pegged for that. So is it possible? I think maybe Councillor McKenna, are we able to take that 25,000 and move it to next year's? So we have now 50,000 for nautical days to make it bigger and better. Is it something that we can move to something to engage with the arts and culture group after COVID's over to have our own? I don't know, maybe Councillor McKenna has an idea of something, but can we reallocate that money to a later time or a different year?
Yeah, you can do both. And ultimately, if these, what I'd say is if the capital and special projects here, as well as our core functions, don't properly represent what council would like to see the municipality doing out into the community, that's where we would be seeking direction from council to make those changes and make sure that we allocate the funds for those areas. So I would say that's certainly possible.
Okay, that's good.
I guess just a follow-up. So I guess my question is if there was a cultural event that we deemed on these plans, and we don't have one now because no one's thought of one, whether it be council or staff, should there be a dollar value reserved on Schedule D for something like this, or is this just something that we should ensure is in the budget?
I guess it depends a little bit on what you would be envisioning have happened. So if you're looking at a one-time event or a one-time project, like to erect a public space in order for art projects to be displayed, right? That would be a special project one time within this budget. If what you're looking for is more of a continuing yearly event in order to celebrate public performances, that would go into the core operating budget. So it would just depend on what type of event or what type of project you would have, what you envision.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe the last thing I would say on that is I'd just encourage council, through your strategic planning meetings to bring those ideas, have those conversations, and maybe kind of identify what it is you want to see within the community. And that would be fed back to staff and then included in our work plans moving forward.
Yeah, the interesting thing about those conversations is that they always seem to fall in your number 8, 9, 10 priority because they're just not seen as important. And the cultural fabric of our whole society is probably important. But so is infrastructure, so is dump trucks, so is parks, so is recreation. And so, I just feel like as a council, we probably need to really consider something stronger as we move towards exiting this pandemic to really celebrate for our citizens. Councillor Grant and I talked a little bit about it, and, maybe it's hiring a really good musical act and throwing a huge party, right? I just don't know where to put that on the agenda. I don't know how to get that money on the agenda. Do I say I would like to put $25,000 in Schedule D for an unnamed, cultural activity?
You can certainly do it that way. I think another way to do it too would just be to have those conversations within the strategic planning meeting, kind of identify what it is we want to do and then set that priority for staff to complete it, because ultimately just leaving a pot of money is only going to be a quarter of your battle, right? If you're able to say right now, allocate some money to be used at a future date, you're still going to need to go. We're still going to need to define what that's going to be, and you're still going to need to convince council that this is a high enough priority in order to be able to move forward. And just since we're on that point, I think after we move through this, getting back into our strategic planning meetings to really look at our strategic plan and do that prioritization, because it was mentioned in the core report on the last meeting, there's a level of uncomfort from me that council is. I'm not sure. There's a level of concern that I have that with the amount that's being asked and staff is saying, we're not sure we're going to be able to get all of this done. Council right now is kind of saying, okay, that's fine. Get done what you can. That concerns me, because that means council may not be setting the priorities that you want to see accomplished, and staff is going to be doing what we think we need to accomplish as well. So it's just taking a look at that and making sure that the priorities that you find as important are identified. So I wouldn't recommend leaving an unspecified pot of money within the budget. I think that tends to be, it doesn't solve the issue, and two, it can be looked negatively upon as slush funds as well, because they're not allocated for something specific. So talking about this within a strategic planning meeting, identifying what it is council wants to do, and then we can add it into the budget at a later date. I would suggest that would probably be the best way to go about it.
Thanks. I'll take that course of action. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any other councillor minions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just in the Schedule D there, I believe we had talked about whether Ellis Park needed to be in the 2021 budget, and I don't think we actually ended up removing anything last time. So just based on the $125,000 spend and a couple of us going down in person, I would say, I know that bumping it to a later date doesn't actually take it off, but I would move to bump that to say 2023 to be revisited then, but not take it off fully, just so it's still in our purview.
Yeah, and I'll second that one.
Second that too.
Yeah. So any discussion on that? This is the Kai Bay Park. Yeah, Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, I was going to bring that one up too. It's not beautiful, but it's definitely functional. It's not about to fall over, and my kids have played there all the time. It's still very active. People really still enjoy it. So if there's no danger, then I say let it stand and push it off.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
Well, so, when I first looked at this, I looked at Ellis, I looked at Village Park Playground and Mackenzie, and they all seem to be, although old, I didn't see anything really falling apart, but then I'm not a playground expert, and perhaps Andrew is. Maybe you could give us a little rundown on the state of these, and if there is some more life in them. Like, I look at the Village Park one, and there's an old car, there's a car set up in there, and it looks a bit rusty because it's made of metal, but doesn't look like it's really hurting anything. So, but I don't know. So maybe you could give us a rundown on that.
Yeah, I mean, generally playgrounds are kind of have it's a wide range, 15 to 25 year lifespan based on, new technology, new safety requirements, the condition of them existing. So that's how we kind of factor in playgrounds going forward as we look at the lifespan. I know from talking with staff, the one at Elks and Royal Purple has been there for at least 35 years. And, it's functional, like you say. So it's just kind of, it's sort of like vehicle asset planning. You look at what the kind of average lifespan is for things, and then you try to replace things as they go forward. So, I mean, it's a strong structure. So if it's something that, council would rather push off, the Village Park one, and some of these parks, the playgrounds look like they've been added to and kind of piecemealed, changed out over years, because there's a couple of new pieces in Village Park and there's a couple of old pieces. So I kind of look at what the date or the age of these are, what the use of those parks and playgrounds are. Like Mackenzie was on the books, I think, for last year, and I kind of swapped around different things based on what the actual use of these various parks and popularity is of them. So, I mean, it's not like they're falling apart. We do monthly inspections on them, repair as we go. It's looking at what the age is and how we can update for, you know, there's new trends and things, and for kids, how they like to play, whether it's, you know, less structured play, those sorts of things. So we look at playgrounds in that sort of sense, but it doesn't mean they're like an immediate hazard or anything like that. That's for sure.
Councilor Grant.
So when I look at the Village Park playground, it's a great little playground, and it's in the woods, and it's kind of in the middle of our disc golf park. But like 100 feet up the pathway, there's another really excellent playground right at the school, and then across the street there's another one right at the rec center.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, then I kind of look and go, well, is there really a need to have 3 playgrounds right in that general area? And so, you know, I'm just throwing it out there as there seems to be a lot of play areas, and that one's starting to get old, and you know, whether there's actually a real need for it. And my second part of this is, when we replace these, will we put softball down around there? Is that part of this, the bids in here? And it's a little bit off topic, or do we go back to the chips? And
Yeah, mainly, I mean, we look at chips just for efficiency, cost, lifespan, maintenance, that sort of thing. Like, I know down at Marina Park, there was the soft surface put in. And so, yeah, it's not every time you look at that. Like the one at Village Park, it has actually gravel in it, which we don't use anymore, wouldn't use anymore. And any new ones, we'd mainly go to chips, is what I'm kind of used to using, because it's has a long lifespan, it's natural, it's environmentally friendly, and it's easy to replace. So that's, yeah.
And your kids can't throw them at you and hurt you when you're there either.
Yeah. Try getting them out of their sweater later, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Andrew, since we're talking about this, one of the things, and I agree with what council's been discussing about some of these parks, that they seem to be good, but one thing I haven't seen on this, unless I missed it, is the playground just down around the corner from us here, the old playground in Marina Park. I think my kids played on that one when they were young, and that's still moving. I see lots of kids on there. And that's an old park. So has there been any discussion on that park? I know at one time when we were talking marina enhancement that we had a different idea for that, and then that's kind of come and gone. But have you folks been discussing that?
No, the only real discussions about that one is exactly like what you said, from the original kind of Marina Park upgrade. From what I understand, you know, there was interest in having a bandstand and things that would suit more with the park itself. So I did want to go and look at replacing that one if, you know, the future desire is to have something else that fits more with public open space and having events and things like that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I guess, you know, the kids are still playing on that. They're having fun. It's old, but it's quite usable. So, Councillor McKenna, I see your hand up.
Yeah, 2 points on that. That's a very good point, Mayor, on that playground. So number one, we have that really wonderful gazebo that's not properly outfitted for live bands, but it could be, and it's a really easy solution. Number two, can you reallocate money from the playground Councillor Grant's talking about in the woods there to that Marina Park playground and decommission the other one?
Sorry, decommission which park?
Village Park?
Village Park, yeah.
Yeah, that if the council wants to decommission or shift the funds around, that's up to you.
But and I would just bring more the one down here, the old one at the Marina Park, for just kind of a discussion piece that, you know, here we got an old park that's quite usable, and it's not on the papers to be changed, but I don't know what the overall plan is. You know, there was talk about having that shell bandstand there, so.
And we're going to be getting into that discussion at the next strategic planning meeting on what we're going to be doing at the Marine Services Building. And I think we'll extend that into what council wants to see as the ultimate vision down at Marina Park. If council was to, if you were not to want to replace a park, I think it would make sense rather than to decommission it, let it live its lifespan until staff identified, okay, this isn't a safe play area anymore. And then you would decommission it at that point.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I did see Shelley's hand up there. Shelley, did you have a comment?
I think Jordan answered it. I was just going to say that was the intent whenever we put the first phase of the marina upgrade, when we got the grant, put the sailing buildings in the water park. We put that additional play structure in at that time. So the intent was the existing play structure would be decommissioned, but staff felt that it was still in good use. Let's just keep it going until we figured out what the next phase of the marina upgrade was going to be, which was that staging area. So that's why you don't see it on the books. I think the whole intent was it would be decommissioned, but we can revisit that again when we look at the marina.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any other comments on these, on Schedule D? So I think we've agreed to pull which parks out, the Ellis, okay, Ellis 2023. So any other first questions on that? So all in favor of that? And that's unanimous, thank you. And so now we're at Schedule D as a whole.
Schedule D as a whole, I think council was, just to make sure you guys are aware, that's just the one playground that's been delayed. Was there other?
There was so the Ellis Playground for 125 was delayed.
Yeah.
That's the one at Kai Bay.
Yeah. So.
And Mackenzie was 3 years out.
Yes.
So you guys are comfortable with everything then?
And then Village Playground was next year. Do we want to, Councillor Grant, you're quite.
Well, when I originally looked at this, I thought to take all of them out and do them with grant money if we could get it. Was where I was originally going with it.
So we got 3 there that we.
So then those were the 3 that I was thinking about. Now I don't know how much grant money comes for these kinds of things or how readily available it is. But I mean, there doesn't seem to be any super rush to replace any of these.
No.
So
no. So do we want to pull all 3 out for the time being then?
Or
second that.
Okay, so that's.
Well, or maybe shade them in blue, which means to do when grant money's available.
When grant money, sure. You second that, Councillor Minions? Okay, so council, the discussion is the 3 parks, Ellis Playground, Village Playground, and Mackenzie Playground, shade them in blue. So when grant money comes available, that we replace them at that time, or until such a time that they fail, that we have to either put them, zone them off or something.
Yeah, that works.
So, Shelley, now have we confused you, because we did take a vote on one that was for the LS. So maybe can we rescind that?
You're okay with this?
And that add to it. Okay, so add to it. So then the motion on the table is to put them all off in blue. So we have mover, seconder. Any questions, comments on that? All in favor? No, that's everyone. Thank you. Okay. I did have one on the Rob Road tennis courts I just wanted to discuss. So that's 3 years out. I guess we can, it is a placeholder, but maybe with the master plan as it states, that could change, because, that could be a tennis court. It could be a pickleball. It could be something other for the kids. So we'll just keep that. I think I answered my own question as I was talking. So,
Okay.
yeah, I like when that happens.
I just wanted
somebody that agrees with you.
I just wanted to jump in and mention, so what we're looking at with the study is not a master plan. So recreation master plans tend to cost somewhere between $70,000 to $150,000. What we're identifying in this one is a $20,000 to identify the next 1 or 2 pieces of recreation infrastructure to look at adding to the community. So I just want to make sure that council's clear on the scope of what's actually happening in that project. It's not a overall recreation site master plan. Those are much different. And again, the cost of those are around somewhere between 70 to 120, even up to 150,000.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be clear.
All right. So there we have it. We've peeled back Schedule D. Unless there's any further items we want to discuss on that, I will call the vote. Do we have a? Oh, sorry, Councillor McGowan, I didn't see you there.
It's all good. I just wanted to make sure that I was the only one interested in moving forward with like a skate park or a pump track and not worry about, you know, things that we already have.
Yeah, no, and I think, you know, as I said, I think you're bang on that those are things that we want to look at, that perhaps this study that the CAO is talking about will identify that one of those could come out of that. Am I correct, CAO?
That's correct. That may be what comes out of it. So
Yeah.
it's just whether or not you want to go through the study, or if you already know what you want, there's no point to go through the study.
Yeah, I think the study would be beneficial.
Yeah, totally up to council.
So,
Oh, sorry. No, the answer.
all right. So no, Councillor McGowan, go ahead. I think I interrupted you there.
Oh, it hasn't come to a vote or anything. So, but it sounds like that most people are, you know, not as convinced that it's gonna come out as a skate park or a pump track, which I'm like 99.9% sure at this point. But yeah, no, if I'm the only one that's going, okay, that's fine. But if we need a vote, that's fine too.
Okay, I had hands up. I had Councillor Grant's hand up, then I saw McKenna, and then I saw Bissinger.
Well,
I'm not sure if those were in the order, but those are the ones that I saw.
Sorry, well, hopefully I don't open up a can of worms here, but I noticed the elevator. I think that's the elevator in the rec center, is it not? That we're talking about?
No, that's a stair.
Is this
No, the elevator on the budget is in the rec center, and
Okay.
actually we did internally have the elevator identified for the stair as well. I believe we're bringing somebody in to take a look at it. It may require replacement right away, so that may be something that we need to do. But with it being a safety issue, if that does pop up as needed this year, staff might just have to go ahead and make that replacement.
But I just, sorry to interrupt, I do believe that Councillor McKenna and Bissinger wanted to speak to the pump track thing. So maybe before we move to the
Oh, do you want to?
elevator.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So I did see McKenna, then Bissinger.
Thank
Pat,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think I understand what you're saying, Councillor McGowan. I just want to make sure that my thing would be if like we may have to go to like, you know, a public process to try and solicit from the community what they would like to see next. And I think that this report and the allocation of $20,000 for that, my assumption would be that we would go to the community and ask the community, what would you like to see next? It might be a pump track, it might be a soccer field, it might be a skate park, might be a theater, could be anything, but I assume that we would go to the community on this, yes?
So
Yeah.
what we're intending right now, and when we spoke to council about this before, there will be both a level of community input as well as an identification of needed, as well as a level of analysis on the types of recreation infrastructure provided compared to the type of demographics that we have, and also in an attempt to identify any underserved demographics. So I think that we all may believe that that teenager age group is an underserved demographic. This would be a process not only to find out from the active members of the community what they want, but also use some sort of scientific process and benchmarking to find out what is it that's actually lacking in the town of Comox.
Mhm.
So it's not a pure public, it's not just a pure public input process. It'll also have benchmarking and analysis provided.
Okay. Councillor McKenna, and then
Yeah.
If that's a
I'll
follow-up,
just-
go ahead, and then Bissinger.
Thanks. I just want to understand. So if they do a scientific analytics, it's going to come back that we have old people living in Comox and that we'll be catering to an older demographic. I think the intent of this originally was to create a space for youth. But I'm a bit confused on how it's worded here. So.
Yeah, and that's likely going to be the outcome, right? So we have, a larger, older demographic, but we also have pretty significant recreation infrastructure for that age group already. We've got the pickleball courts, we've got pretty extensive green spaces and walking areas. So what this would be doing is helping to identify if there are underserved demographic groups in the community. So even if the teenager group is not the largest group in the community, it may, through this process, be identified as the most underserved group and thus in need of the next piece of recreation infrastructure, which may be a skate park, it may be a pump track, it may be something out on the water, who knows what it may be, but that would be the process we go through.
Okay, I just hope that demographic has a voice in this.
And that's, so one of the reasons why we're going through this we're weighting this to include a level of analysis and demographic and benchmarking, is that one of the risks you run when you go to a purely public process is that well-organized interest groups can overrepresent themselves in the process to make it seem like the need that they're representing is much greater. Organized sports are very good at that. If they want an extra field, or if they want to, maybe hockey says we really need another ice rink. And so then they would organize and get everybody to come out. And what you get from the public is 97% of your respondents are telling you that you want another ice rink. Well, in reality, it's just that group organized to get their people out very well. And that's why we're trying to find the balance between the benchmarking, analysis, and public input.
Okay, understood.
And Councillor Bissinger, I don't think you
Sure,
answered.
thank you. And I appreciate the study, except, to go to Councillor McKenna's point, unless you're going in the schools, like in the high schools and canvassing what is required by the youth, I'm just scared it'll be skewed towards more pickleball courts, no disrespect to that. So, if Councillor McGowan wants to put a motion to put a pump track or a BMX track or a skate park, I would absolutely second that. Just looking at, we've taken off all these playgrounds. I think that's roughly like 300K. And in discussions I've had with the Parks Department in Cumberland, when they built their pump track, it was around the 150 mark or so. I think it was 90K, but they got some materials donated through Waycor, through one of their projects. Basically, when they're resurfacing some road and taking out some subgrade, they repurposed that soil for a pump track. So, if that's something that we can look at, or at least, if we do that study, go to the high schools and present, 3 options, whatever it may be, but actually get that input from the youth. I would definitely support something in action more than just, missing our chance with the youth.
So maybe I'd suggest, if you were looking for a motion like that, that you would make a change to this amount and make a change to the description for staff to identify through a public consultation process a youth-specific recreation infrastructure. And then we'll go out, we'll start a public process, we'll come back to council. I don't want council to identify, okay, this is what we want. I think maybe let's identify, this is the age group that we're attempting to service. You're looking for something that's not in the community already. Let's go out, have that public consultation process, bring it back, and then we would have something to construct next year.
So what amount would you be thinking of changing it, more or less?
Less. That we won't need as much money for that. We would, $10,000 is going to be more than enough to do that.
Okay, so I'd make that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And then, as a follow-up, could we add, for 2022, could we earmark whatever it may be, 250K for it? So it's on our budget. So as soon as we figure out what that, requirement is, then we already have it funded for the following year.
Yeah, you can. We would still come back to council in the budget process and request authorization to construct next year. So it wouldn't give us the ability to construct automatically. We'll still come back to you, but it is not a bad idea to have that in there, and it's in your financial plan, and you can see what the total cost you're looking at for next year are. So based on what you're saying, I'll suggest a motion of that hold on, let me pull it up here. What page is that specific item on?
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That the recreation and parks capacity assessment be changed to a youth recreation outreach study to identify, Shelley, are you getting all this as I make it up? To identify recreation infrastructure for the youth in Comox, and that the amount in 2021 be changed to 10,000, and an amount in 2022 be added of 250,000, or whatever council. Ultimately, that's going to change, but
Yeah.
there you go.
So when we take things out of our plan, it doesn't affect it. So when we add things in, that shouldn't affect it?
It won't.
Just trying to figure this out.
That's right. It won't affect it, and it won't affect it. Yeah, you're good. I say that hesitantly because now there's a
Ted's hand went up.
Yeah, we're probably the only community in Canada adding to their plan, but I like it because it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a
Oh, there's Ted.
this is a motion. So I'm.
Ted's got his hand up.
Oh, Ted, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the great work the CAO just did, doing that on the fly, can we add recreation and park infrastructure? Because that's just really specifically what we're talking about here, is a park recreation mix for youth, right? Not just strictly recreation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cool.
Can I move that?
Are you okay with your motion being changed?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, Ted's saying this is Andrew's issue, not mine.
Yeah. and count. Okay, Councillor Minions, go ahead.
Just a follow-up to that, Ted, if we do the youth outreach and it comes out that, like in past, there was some facility within the recreation center that was youth driven or timeline, if we say recreation and parks, does that take out the possibility that if some sort of, I don't know what part-time youth center looks like, is instead of putting it all onto parks, would that leave that open with parks and recreation infrastructure being the coined term?
100%. It leaves all options on the table.
Perfect. That's great.
Okay, so this could be a pump track. It could be a floating dock off of the marina. You know, all those things.
It can do.
Yeah, good.
And
Okay.
it might be that more than one issue comes back, and I actually promise more than one will come back, and council will have to decide.
Yeah. No, and this is good, and I think, you know, this is bang on. This is what we talked about late last summer when we saw that demographic of youth kind of needing something. So thanks for that. So Councillor Bissinger, you're okay with the motion that the CAO put forward, and somebody seconded it? We'll say McGowan, you second it, and so any more discussion on that? All in favor? Yeah, that's everybody. Thank you. And the elevator.
So my question on the elevator was, because I thought this was the one at the rec center and not the one over here. If it turns out we need to replace this one, how much of a need is this elevator? And reading this, it sounds like it's a bit of a pain in the ass to operate, but not the end of the world. Could we switch that 50,000 and put it into Destair instead of putting it into the community center? And I see Ted going, no, don't do that. But I'm just wondering, you know, I mean, we don't want to have to pay for 2 elevators. We don't have to.
Right. CAO, you?
Yeah, we're looking at some of the things that are coming back on the Destair elevator. We're getting an assessment done on that, and if it comes back and it's as bad as it appears, we're going to have to replace that, and we're just going to probably have to move ahead and replace that.
But what is the need on the rec center one? Is it in need of replacement, or is that just maintenance, or like how much does an elevator cost?
About 50,000. Probably 60 when you're taking it out and disposing. That's the Destair. That was the Destair cost. Ted, do you want to talk about the rec center?
So the community center elevator is reaching end of life. It's almost original to the building, so it's actually exceeded its lifespan. The $50,000 increases the capacity, which I think is important because if you're using the elevator to avoid the stairs, it's probably because you have a challenge with mobility. You may need an assistant. That's putting 2 people and some sort of mobile assistance apparatus in there as well. Right now, that comes very close to our limit. So this just increases the accessibility to the 2nd floor and deals with the end of life issue.
Okay. And Councillor Minions?
Yeah, it sounds like that recreation one might be needed. But with the Destair one, I thought about a year to a year and a half ago, there was an assessment done and they did come back that it was not fixable within a safety, but so I don't know where that's at. But the Destair had also raised somewhere between like $20,000 and $25,000 towards the, I had thought it was 80,000, not 50,000 on that one. But so this was like partway in motion as far as a company had gone out and assessed it and they had raised money. So I just wanted to make sure that whatever work was done 1 to 2 years ago is still kind of alive so we're not repeating anything that's already been done.
Yeah, so we've checked into what was done in the past, and I believe there was an assessment done because repairs were done at that time, which extended the life a little bit. And Destair, I believe, has raised $16,000 to contribute to the repair, which is why, or part of the reason why I'm not too concerned about moving forward and making a replacement this year if it's deemed necessary. It's a health and safety thing, especially accessibility in that area, and Destair's raised a chunk of money in order to contribute. So we're going to be waiting for that to get final assessment to come back to us. Councillor McGowan and I are also going to be meeting with Destair to talk about that and a couple other issues. And once we know what we're doing, we'll move forward on it.
Okay. And I did see Councillor McGowan's hand up. Do you want to add anything?
Oh, I was just wanted to speak to the elevator. The elevator has gotten much worse. It's not just an annoyance thing anymore. It's a safety issue. After a day or two of non-use, the elevator is sitting between the 2 floors rather than at one or the other. It's really not functioning anymore. So yeah, they're looking into it. They're getting a company out to take a look, to make sure, to find out what's working, what's not, and assess it. Okay. But it's just not functional anymore.
Okay, thanks for that. So any other discussion on this? So we're looking at Schedule D, so nothing further to pull out. So we did make some amendments for the parks. So then with the amendment. Sorry, what's that? Oh, Councillor McGowan, sorry.
I just wanted to ask really quickly about the Christmas decorations, and what is it that needs to be replaced? That's 40 grand for Christmas.
It's so all those snowflakes you see that go up every year around Christmas, they're super old, metal, rusty. One of them actually fell off one of the lamp standards this year. They're all incandescent bulbs, so they've been around for a long time and at their end of life. And when I was looking into all this stuff, talked to Courtney last year and looked into a few wholesale suppliers, something similar like that in this day and age, LED is about $1,000 a pop. So we have 30 something roughly through town. So that's the kind of cost to replace all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they are popular. I through the BIA, I get a lot of accolades about that. And so with that, Andrew, because they're LED, would we have the ability to change the colors on some of them? What I was thinking, if they were,
it would be what the kind of the specific ones we'd be looking for that have multicolor, that sort of thing. So
right.
Yes.
Because they're nice, especially in the world of COVID, anything to lighten up the downtown. And then say if they were to stay on for February, you could turn the stars red for Valentine's. I was just thinking something along those lines. I am a softie at heart here, you know. So anyway, that's what I was thinking. So, okay, thanks for that.
That makes sense. They're iconic.
Yeah. All right. So seeing none, I guess we'll just vote in favor of Schedule D with the amendments that we had made. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, folks. And I do appreciate everyone taking the time to go through this because it was a bit of a bear. And I'm just glad you did most of the talking because I got to sit here. And all right. So we will move on to reports from members of council. And I bet everybody wants to make it quick. So we're going to start with Councillor Grant because I totally forgot him last time. So
Hang on, now I gotta
yeah.
go back to my notes. Okay, so we had probably the shortest RD meeting we've had for a while. And most of it was the electoral areas, so there wasn't a heck of a lot there, but.
Councillor Grant, can you speak into your mic a bit better? Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so short RD meeting for once, and they're going to an alternative approval process for rural garbage curbside pickup, which doesn't affect us, but it'll be good for them. And decided to go to the alternative approval process for the sewer project as well. The thinking there is that it's not something that we have any choice in doing anyway. So to run a referendum would be about $40,000 and we're going to do it regardless. So those were really the highlights and a fairly small decrease in budget coming from the RD. So a little bit less spent there. So those were kind of the highlights of a short meeting. And I also had the Economic Development Service review yesterday, but it was in camera. So I can talk about that later tonight if you want to hear about it, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, Councillor Minions.
We attended, most of us were at the community forum, which the CVRD hosted along with Comox First Nations, had a couple of presentations. So that was a couple hours of just kind of learning about where things are mostly under UNDRIP and how that will come to play out in municipalities and more learning. Am I tiring you out? I'm just kidding. There was a waste management meeting and I took notes and there was nothing major of interest on that one. So those are the only two that I had.
Great, thank you. Councillor Swift, and then we'll go to McKenna.
Thank you. I don't think we reported out on the CVRD meeting that was prior to the one that was this week. So there was the CVRD meeting 2 weeks ago, sewer, water, the recreation, where you probably read about the ice allocation policy. But the CVRD, and then the CVRD meeting this week. The CVRD meeting from 2 weeks ago, one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to was the Climate Action Challenge, where there is $27,000 available for the community to come up. It's a competition that's going to open up on Earth Day and close in June. And up to 3 groups could win the $27,000. So it could be split between 3 groups or 1 group. So it's just going to be running April to June. The Youth Climate Action Group has been informed of this, so they'll be involved in it. But if there are any other community groups or members that are interested, the requirements are going to be online starting on Earth Day, so they can be thinking about it. So I thought it might be of interest to people. I also attended a 911 meeting, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Councillor McKenna, then McGowan.
Okay, so I also attended the KFN community to community session, and it was excellent learning, really excellent, actually enjoyed it. And today I attended the Comox Valley Chamber, had a business to business event focused on pandemic recovery, and it was just a group of a bunch of community leaders, businesses that were talking about how they recovered and are recovering through the pandemic. And finally, I've put my name forward. The executive director for Vancouver Island Regional Library has retired. And so I put my name forward as a trustee to be involved in the hiring process, and I'll just let council know later if I'm accepted in that or not. I just thought with my experience, I could help.
Great, thanks, McGowan, and then Councillor Bissinger.
I also attended the council to council meeting. It was very, very interesting. Learned a lot. I've been to the museum a couple of times, went on a walkthrough to see the new exhibit, which is dream dresses from the 1900s to about the 60s. There's some really incredible things in there, not just fashion, but other wonderful things. And it is available by appointment if anybody wants to go. They're not open to the public, but you can call and make an appointment and go. I had a Destair meeting. Talked about lots of different things. The memberships have started selling again this year, and they're doing really well. So that's awesome since they haven't been open. But especially with the vaccines rolling out, they are hoping to be open soon. Attended a community substance use committee meeting. There was an update on the consultation, and there should be a draft report available soon. Went to the museum with Jordan and took a look around with everybody. Food Policy Council, we did a year in review and looking at what our priorities will be for the next year. Quite an interesting long meeting. And the Food Policy Council Municipal Policy Subcommittee spoke a little bit about where the urban farming, where that sits right now. And yeah, that was my time.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Bissinger.
Sure, thanks. I also attended the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board meeting. Hot topics were fire prevention and community resilience and wood chip management. Also, I spoke to one of the VPs of Pacific Energy wood stoves, so that was pretty interesting with all the air quality letters that we've been getting. And that is it for me.
Great, thank you. And briefly for myself, I did another Rotary presentation on the health of the town, the KFN community to community Zoom meeting. I attended a BIA meeting, and I have to say that the downtown merchants are doing a great job in trying to get through this the pandemic. Hopefully the end of the pandemic is near, but member shop local. And with Mayor Wells, I attended a brief meeting regarding economic development. And that would be it. So at this point, I'd like to get a resolution to go in camera.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. And to staff, thank you very much for your time in helping us out here tonight. Much appreciated.